You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 94, Black Sabbath, Born Again. And coming to you from the snowed-in suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John 3 Pepper Matola.
And from the frozen lakes of the Great White North, it's that little digital bitch, Rye from Sabbath Buddy Podcast. How's it going?
How you doing, Rye?
How you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, this could have been like episode 49, but then COVID hit, and now it's 94, and we're finally getting to it.
That's right.
You had quite a wild ride.
It only took a year.
And I'm still wearing the same shirt, so.
You've just been waiting in that shirt.
Yeah. For life to start again.
It looks like Rye live at the Improv with your
Yeah,
background.
I love it.
You just need like a fake fern in the.
What's the deal with Deep Purple?
They're not deep. They're not purple.
Yeah. Where are they?
So thanks for joining us. And we haven't had one of these chats in a little while. Last one was not released. It's unreleased, left on the cutting room floor. But so if for those sad individuals who aren't familiar with your great podcast, tell us a little bit about it. What's Sabbath Bloody Podcast all about?
Oh, well, it's about Sabbath. Yeah, Black Sabbath Podcast, much like these guys. It's kind of rolled into an Aussie podcast though, because I've been around the block. Been doing this for 2 years now, has it been? I don't know. I started right when you guys started, right?
A little before, I think. Yeah, you
before maybe.
You were a little bit into the Sabbath catalog, and you covered all their albums.
So I kind of went album to album by myself. I don't have a counterpart, but I go deep. I check facts. I go into books and stuff like that, and I pulled out all the music. Originally, I had played the tracks kind of like you guys did, but then I had a whole kerfuffle back and forth there. Sharon was on the line with me. No, it's nothing like that. I just decided to clean it up. So it's a little bit different as far as like, it's more based on just kind of the chronological journey as opposed to like listening to the tracks. So I'm excited to be on your guys' show because I actually get to, be one with the music, be in there with it.
That's awesome. You did have that great guy you found that did all the Sabbath riffs, so you were able to play that was really cool.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. Danish guitarist on YouTube, and I hit him up, and he's like just a Tony Iommi like tone worshiper basically. Yeah. But he kills a lot of those riffs. And I even picked up the bass a little bit and played along with him sometimes. I stopped doing that though pretty quick. I got some comments on my technique.
You got comments, really?
I got one that was like, yo, dude, like, I can't, like, you're mixing with the guitar, you're not in time and stuff like that. I'm like, well, okay, whatever.
You're not releasing it.
It happens.
Well, screw that guy.
Yeah.
This is not good for when the album drops.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not good.
Well, I had fun listening to it. I wasn't too focused on I didn't get out my metronome or anything. So
cool.
maybe if I do that, I'll have some feedback for you.
Yeah. Well, anytime you try to like play a riff, people are going to see you're playing it wrong, or that's not what he plays. I mean,
oh yeah, of course.
Yes. Yeah. I am not Geezer Butler.
It is the secret's out. You are not actually Geezer Butler.
Yeah. I nailed the Dave Spitz 7-star riffs though.
Nailed him. I thought I was in the room
Beast.
with Dave himself.
Yeah.
But
not Geezer, but maybe Dave Spitz.
Maybe.
So John, I got it before we move on. With 3 peppers, you said? What's that all about?
Yeah, 3 Pepper. Because I was at work today and somebody said that I was spicy. So they called me 3 Pepper Matola. And that's about that.
This is it's
And
not,
I immediately thought, that's a great nickname for tonight.
it's not untrue. And just not that anyone
Yeah.
cares, but we are my kids haven't been in school since last March. It's the end of January now, so it's been over 10 months since they've been in school. Their first day back is tomorrow. We got a giant snowstorm coming through, so they might have a snow day on their first day of school in 10 months. Awesome.
Great.
Uh,
Snowstorms. Yeah, I know about those.
Yeah.
Actually, it's been pretty mild up here.
yeah.
We've had a very mild winter here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I get
you're-
maybe I just don't
Us
notice the
too.
snowstorms because I'm inside all the time. So
exactly. And normally it wouldn't really affect much for me either, except for my commute.
yeah.
But before we move on, we have to do, as we always do, thank all of our amazing patrons and donators via PayPal and all that happy stuff. Coming to you at the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, we have Ryan M. and Gerald Kelly. The $15 Highball Shooter tier, we have Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. The Turn It Up to $11 tier, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. The $10 Someone Came tier, Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldToStage.net, and Jeff Bryce. At the episode $6.66 tier, Richard Fusey. The $5.99 Nice Price tier, Fielding Fowler. The $5 Moneylender tier, Big Breath, Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Kenny Wymore, Jesper Alman, and Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Will Porter, and Andrew Meyer. And at the $1 Made-Up Name tier, Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, The Unholy Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 fanatic, and Raf Calf. Thank you to all of you for your support. We appreciate it. Whew.
Legends.
I know, legend,
Every
all of
last
them.
one of them.
As we approach episode 100, we're starting to rethink that, you know, how we're going through these patrons. Is just, there's so many of them, but keep them coming. We love it.
Yeah, you gotta always say Leaky Mausoleum though, because that's like
How do
highlight
you-
of my week.
How do you how do you not go through Leaky Mausoleum? Thanks to, of course, the Deep Dive Podcast Network in the along with us today, of course, Riot Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Skinner Reconsidered, T-Bone's Prime Cuts, In the Lap of the Pods, and the Magician's Podcast. Thank you to all of them for their continued support as well. So speaking of our patrons, I did before we move on, I did get I got a letter in the mail from one of our patrons, and it doesn't happen every day.
Ooh.
So
Did you
in
disinfect it?
I did. I kept it in quarantine for 4 days before I opened it. Here's the letter, and it's got a picture of the Deep Purple mug on it. And
Hey.
so this picture here, so that's the mug, and you can see it says Pete on it below the mug in Dymo label, as we've discussed on the show. So here's what it says: Nate, loving the DPP swag. Had to make sure that those in the house know to move on to another coffee mug. Enclosed are tags for both you and John. And of course, this is from Peter Gardeau. And he sent us a Dymo label that he made with, says Nate, and then John. You know how Dymo labels get jammed sometimes? So like the H is like over the O. So they did it again and did John. So I got all three of those. Rye, I'll send you the one that's messed up, the one that the John that's messed up.
Awesome. I could have a messed up John one. Yeah.
So yeah, so he sent us our own Dymo labels.
Sweet.
I don't know how those will fare in the dishwasher, but loving it. So Peter never misses an opportunity to to come up with. So usually we just get funny stuff from him in an email. So we appreciate the actual snail mail from him today.
Yeah, that's awesome. With the picture on it, like it looks like you get an email with an attachment. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
The picture's like.
But that was a treat when I saw his return address label there with the little maple leaf on it. I was pretty delighted. So, Rye, you got anything? Usually you have a pint of doom with you for your episodes. What do you have tonight?
I got some tonight. I'm gonna go with Sapporo.
Oh, there you go.
Because I hear Gillan is big in Japan.
That's true. That's good. That's a good.
That's as close as I could have.
That's pretty good. Well, I considered tequila and then thought better of it because I figured I'd be on the floor by midway through the episode.
Oof.
But
I am within arm's reach of my tequila collection. Wanna
I
go
was
crazy.
I was actually messaging Rye last night at the liquor store saying, and I just walked in and I took a picture of the beer section and sent it over and said, I really need to find something that's born again related. And I wonder what it could be. I didn't know what I'd find. And then like almost the first beer I saw was this. It's basically the cover of Born Again as an adult. It's like a big muscle bound demon. Red demon has the yellow horns and fingernails. And the beer is
Perfect.
it's from a local Chicago brewery, Low Res Brewing, a Belgian style, a demon Belgian style golden ale. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Do you like Belgians?
I love Belgians, both the people and the beer.
The women.
The Belgian women, but the Belgian beer is actually probably one of my favorites. So an appropriate glassware. Cheers. Look at that. It's
Cheers.
beauty right there. And John doesn't even drink water when we record, so.
Yeah, I heard that about you.
I'll just raise my mug. Raise my mug. Yeah.
I got
my mug with nothing in it. Yeah.
I got my tea in a thermos here for after this beer. But,
yeah, I don't know. I don't drink during the week.
Yeah, we'll drink enough for both of you. Or for you.
Okay.
So this there's a lot to say about this album. So just to briefly just to kick it off, talk about a little bit about the lead up to the album. So apparently, and forgive me, I'm not even a Deep Purple expert by any means, but even less so about Sabbath. But Dio, he leaves Sabbath. He apparently in a big kerfuffle over the Live Evil mixes. I guess he wasn't happy with those. You can please feel free to interrupt me at any time, Rye, when I'm either A, getting something wrong, or B, rambling. But
yeah, it was during the mixes there, but there's a lot of, like, Dio's gone on to say that Tony was a bit too much of a cokehead for him at that time, and like there's a bunch of conflicting reasons for the ultimate breakup there, and Tony says that Dio was being a control freak, which he probably was, and it kind of blew apart there during the mix. So the album was done, and yeah.
I can't imagine being in a band with either of them in 1982 would have been an easy thing. But what do you want?
I think both stories check out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because a lot of the stuff I'm reading in Gillan's book and Martin Popoff's book, the Born Again book, it's a lot of stories about everyone being like, wow, Ian Gillan, he really drank a lot and everything. But meanwhile, they're just doing rails of coke all the time. Like, man, that guy drinks a lot. It's just very odd to me that that would be the big concern. But they considered a few different people that were batted around, including Robert Plant, David Coverdale, and Michael Bolton. None of those came through, obviously.
I think Bolton's the only one who actually.
Any one of them would have been amazing.
Yeah, I know, right? I think with Coverdale too, they were trying to get Coverdale and Cozy. That's what Iommi said.
Ooh.
So obviously they were both.
That would have been something.
Going somewhere else at that point, right? Because that would have been right when Whitesnake was re-upping or something like that.
Yeah, Nibby was kind of hit or miss day to day, right? Like he was.
Yeah. I think when they broke off the Dio thing, well, I mean, by that point, Appice was their man, and then Appice went with Dio. But I don't think the original intention after the split happened was to just get the lineup back together, like it ended up kind of happening that way. I think even at that point, Iommi wanted to kind of be the man, do the solo thing, and he wanted to do it with Coverdale, Cozy, like a new band that wasn't Black Sabbath. And he actually has like a little like entourage that he was hanging out with. Jeff Nichols, you've probably heard the name, keyboard player. And he was in a band called Quartz, which Iommi, I think around that time, he did one of their albums. I haven't really listened to much of them, but what I have heard of them is pretty awesome. I'd like to dive into some more, actually.
Yeah, this is Iommi produced their first album, so.
Yeah. So he was kind of hanging tough with with Nichols and the Quartz guys. Even I think the drummer of Quartz, actually I might be wrong on that, I don't know if he was in Quartz, but there was another drummer that they were fleshing out ideas with that like right into like what you would consider the Born Again sessions, I guess, because he was Malcolm Cope was his name, and he was drumming with him, getting ideas together with the intention that he knew that Bill Ward would come back.
Mhm.
But I think that all started really early after the Dio break off.
So the way that this whole band got together is kind of like the stuff of legend, right? Is like there's a lot of stories that go into it about, they were drunk and Gillan didn't even realize he was joining Sabbath and everything. And in reality, it seems like it was kind of set up by Don Arden, who suggested Gillan and got them together. There was a huge drunken night involved, but it wasn't kind of this like thing that, oops, I woke up and realized I was in Black Sabbath. It wasn't quite didn't live up to the folklore that came out of it. It was
maybe it was for the lads, but there was definitely like Don was in control of making that happen. He wanted, I mean, at that time the Ozzy, Don Arden, Sharon thing, like that was all like all over the place. I think a lot of it is fabricated by like fanfare and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot more is like dramas put into it, because there's so much crossover between the camps at that time that I think they were kind of in control of what was being shown. But ultimately he wanted, I think even when Ozzy went solo and Sharon, infamous, she went to Ozzy and signed him up or brought him in, and Don was obviously in charge of that as well. They wanted Ozzy to like be opening for Sabbath, like even before Dio got in, and Don always had these crazy ideas, and we'll just get into that all day today. I mean, it's just absolute fuckery around this album. But is that the first time I swore? I was gonna say anytime I swear we should take a drink, but
no, please don't do this to me,
because you guys keep it so clean.
Yeah.
We keep it somewhat clean. We don't
Yeah. Well, I
the
mean,
heck with it. That's what
like
I say.
Denny's.
No, it's fine. I always put the explicit label on all of our episodes because I'm never sure. Like, I'm sure there's some point I'm like always like, if I don't put the explicit label on, they'll ban us because one of us let something slip. And sometimes I'll read quotes and stuff. But yeah, we don't this is not a Denny's, but we try to keep it clean. But so at any rate, so yeah, Don Arden is kind of at this point. Sharon split off, going with Ozzy. Don basically wants to destroy Ozzy and show that Black Sabbath is the heaviest, awesomest band in the world. Gillan says, I guess Gillan's manager may have been the one that started the stories, which is basically he found out about Gillan joining Sabbath from after this meeting and being like, what the hell, you're changing bands and you don't even tell me. So he's kind of upset about that. And also upset were John McCoy and Colin Towns of Gillan, who kind of found off about this. Gillan had kind of taken a 3-month break from Gillan took a break from Gillan, the band. The man took a break from the band because he had vocal nodes that had developed. He needed to rest his throat and all that. And he basically said he didn't want the band members to wait around for him. He encouraged them to pursue other projects. But basically, this was the end of Gillan with him joining back into Black Sabbath. The band was over. So there was it sounds like a little bit of acrimony between McCoy and Towns and Gillan because of that. So he was still, through all this, was a little bit hesitant about joining the band, but his manager, after hearing about it, decided to push him into it. And as you said, Iommi was this was kind of built up. I guess it's all based on these points of view, right? So depending on who you are, Gillan's thinking, oh, I'm joining this and this is going to be a super group. Which is weird because why would it be a super group with 3 members of Black Sabbath and Ian Gillan? That sounds like Black Sabbath, right? But then Iommi, I guess, like you said, had this idea like this is going to be almost like an Iommi project where I'm working with other people. But then again, he's got 3 members of his old band and Ian Gillan. So there was really no other way to go but to call this Black Sabbath because it really was Black Sabbath. And that's what they stuck with. So then, so Ward had become sober and remained sober through most of the recording sessions. Towards the end, kind of had some troubles with that. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of talk in Martin Popoff's book about there being like, oh my God, Black Sabbath's going to be British again. Like they were really excited about the fact that it was going to be an all British lineup again. which is cool. And I guess it meant something to them. And there's a lot of talk also in the band about, how Gillan is talking, us British rockers have a certain way about us, and that's why it worked out so well. But then you've also got this thing where Iommi and Butler and all them are like, you need to kind of meet our aesthetic and wear leather and everything. And Gillan's like, yeah, I'm just not doing that. So he kind of was a little defiant in that way. And he's Ian Gillan. He's not gonna be a pushover. He's not some young upstart singer they just found on the street. He's gonna just Ian Gillan, even if he was, he's always just kind of do his own thing.
Yeah, he's showing up with those congas. He doesn't give a shit.
And as we talked about before, I think we started recording, is this, there could be easily 2 or 3 episodes on this album. And coming up, we'll have to go into the tour part of this album. We won't get too much into that here because there's so much. Pretty much the entire Spinal Tap movie is
it's beautiful.
almost based on this. And he does bring the congas on stage, which draws a lot of ire.
They actually work pretty well on War Pigs. I thought it was cool.
Why not?
Once it picks up, he's Gillan's the man.
You can't keep him away from the congas. And apparently during the rehearsals, Gillan lived in a tent on his own. He had a boat nearby to go sailing, and he lived in a tent.
Yeah.
And then he had a separate tent with his golf clubs in it, and he was watching his golf clubs, which is funny. I don't remember ever hearing about Gillan being a big golfer, but apparently he was. And he kept them in their own separate tent. He's like, who was it? Was it like Gaddafi or something that like always like lived in a tent? He's like, very, very odd.
Did you, and the story about Iommi getting the fireworks? So Iommi got the pyro guy for Black Sabbath. He got all the fireworks and he blew up his tent while he was in it. And Gillan was freaking out, obviously.
One would expect.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't write a song about that.
Yeah, I know.
That's what he does. He just writes songs about the manor.
Yeah, it's pretty easy getting Ian Gillan on your album. It's just I don't know. I'll go live in a tent outside the recording studio, and whatever crazy stuff happens, we'll write a song about it. It's very easy. So I mean, all the people on this album are pretty much don't need any sort of introduction. If you're listening to this show, you know who Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Tony Iommi are. Jeff Nichols, you might be a little less familiar with. Rye gave a great kind of summary there. He started playing with Sabbath in like late '79. Like I said, Tony Iommi produced his self-titled, the Quartz self-titled debut album, and his first shot with Sabbath on record was Heaven and Hell. So some good stuff there. All right, so now speaking of where we could break this up into in individual episodes, we've got to talk about the album art. And normally we don't spend a ton of time talking about album art, but it's kind of hard to ignore this one, mostly based on just the amount of controversy that surrounds it. So here we go. Up on the screen, you've got the Born Again album cover.
Look at that beauty.
Before we get into all the crazy stuff about this album cover, what are your personal feelings on this album cover? John, you want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, well. I'll just give my recollections of how I thought of it before I knew everything else, because that kind of, brings into it, the history behind it or whatever. I mean, it's kind of a crappy album cover, but at the same time, it's not. Like I always thought it was kind of badass when I was younger, because I mean, it's, you got a baby devil on it. You have the font is like really, what do you call that font?
Like an old English sort of.
Yeah, it's like
like a really kind of like antique, like,
but it's
like an old English type of font and everything
very
like that.
If you look closely at it, it's very like shaky sort of, but on purpose.
Yeah, it just it's just one of those album covers. It's like, all right, this is, you look at it and you think, okay, Black Sabbath, I mean, maybe brings back in a more kind of a cheesier way, like the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album cover or something like that. Less involved, but yeah, I always thought it was, kind of intriguing, just like any other album cover is supposed to draw you in. It's just like, okay, this is the Ian Gillan album, the one with him on it. What's in this? later on though, just finding out where it came from, and then just kind of that purplish blue against the red, which is just hideous to the eyes. It's my adult self just thinks it's not a great album cover, but iconic nonetheless. I mean, you really can't forget it. Yeah, I mean, iconic for this era, for this lineup. But yeah, that's my thing about it.
Yeah, you can't
Kind of
say that
made
it
me
doesn't
think of
grab your attention, right? Like
yeah,
those
like
colors are
the
just
fangs and
nuts.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the baby devil thing just made me think of like the horror movies and stuff like that I liked from the late 70s, early 80s. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's like
Who's
I've
next?
actually dove into it. I'll go. I dove into it quite a bit, and like because the actual artist who did it, there's a whole connection with Ozzy and all that stuff too. So the guy's name is the Crusher Jewel. So from what I gather, he kind of was like a Kerrang dude. Like he works with Kerrang. He's really tight with like Mick Wall and those guys. They have all kinds of war stories together. But he was at the time, well, he had done the Speak of the Devil layout kind of thing. I don't know if he designed the bat, like the Aussie bat. I think he might have drawn that because it's kind of got his style. But I know he came on like Diary and he did like the layout of that. He didn't like design the cool Aussie logo, obviously, but you can tell with like the layout, the borders, that kind of stuff. He was involved heavily in that as like a creative director, I guess. And so, yeah, he did Speak of the Devil, and obviously all that cross pollination, the weird like Sharon breaking off at that point and Dawn going after her. He was trying to get as much stuff that Ozzy was using and trying to use it against them. They were doing the same thing, like it's to Speak of the Devil gatefold, like with the Ronnie midget and stuff like that, where Ozzy's strangling him. So I think a lot of that was perpetuated by them, of course, because they were still sharing assets. So like Crusher here, he was asked by Dawn to come over and give a bunch of ideas for the Born Again album. And so he was already commissioned to do Bark at the Moon as well. They had already been doing kind of layout stuff for that. And he knew that was like his next big cash thing. And I guess this one, he was kind of competing against a couple. It was like an open call to a bunch of designers, but they specifically wanted him in the mix so they could pull it against Ozzy. I think that kind of thing, create more drama there. So he goes on record as saying that he just did the worst covers he could imagine. He said he did a bunch and he wishes that he had like all the other ones too. And I wish he did too. It'd be great to see all like him just trying to do the worst thing possible or whatever. So with this one here, he said in an interview that he pulled the baby from like a random like medical journal or something like that and just fucked around with the colors, added the horns and picked really discordant colors, purposely did a really bastardized font like you guys were talking about there, that shaky font. But he purposely tried to make it bad. But Dawn loved it and showed it to the lads. I think Iomi loved it. And Geezer said it was the worst thing he's ever seen, but he loved it. Like he's like one of those like, so it's so bad it's good, like, which is kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, it's just like it's kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of awesome too. So on their merit, it got kind of pushed through, and we'll get into what Gillan thought about it later, probably. But yeah, but like Crusher, yeah. So like he's got that through line. He was purposely trying to make a crappy album. He got the commission for it, and they went ahead with it. But I love it. It's just like, especially with all the weirdness around it, it really fits a lot of the songs too for some reason. I guess just you associate it with it because it's what you're holding in your hand when you're listening to it or whatever. But it just has that kind of tripped out kind of grindhouse feel, and there's something about the whole it's like a silk screen kind of look. It's like a badass version of the Andy Warhol banana or something like that. Just the composition of it, not like the iconicness of it, but
Yeah, it does kind of have that look.
Yeah, it's got like that stickery kind of look, really heavy outline. I think it's really cool. It's fun, and it suits the album. But what did Gillan think? Have you heard that? His story?
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so many scores. The deluxe edition of the CD of this has some great. It seems like the liner notes are almost entirely about the album cover. There's a few other things mentioned. Yeah, but like you said, Steve Crusher Jewell had been brought in. There's even allegations of sabotage, like he was trying to sabotage the Black Sabbath album because he was working for Ozzy as well, and he wanted their album cover to look like crap. And he says he in an alcohol fueled stupor he submitted these designs, and Don liked this one. Iommi liked it. It's got some quotes here. Um, Jewel says, Iommi loved it. Geezer looked at it and said, it's shit, but it's fucking great. So,
a boy.
So Butler kind of signed on, and then kind of a lot of things like with this album, you'll see between the cover and the mix and all the other issues that happen, there's a lot of finger pointing and, oh, it was that guy's fault. Even though, I think we all have a soft spot for this album most likely, but there's a lot of kind of, oh, well, it's not, there's some problems. That was his fault. He liked it, but I didn't. Everyone wants to disavow the things that they're not happy about. Another great quote from Iommi says, when you see the cover, we're not talking about born again Christians. So, I like that one. Gillan said, the first time I saw the album cover, I puked. And then allegedly he had a box of 25 of these albums and he threw them out a window. Just let them shatter in the street or whatever, because he was so disgusted with the way that they looked. Kerrang! Magazine, the same outlet that Jewel worked for, ranked this as number 2 in the 10 worst album sleeves in metal hard rock history. Number 1 going to Love Drive by Scorpions.
Oh, yeah. That's the bubblegum one?
Yeah. Which is weird because that one to me is like, it's a weird album cover, but it's very well done.
Yeah.
And it's definitely memorable, but I wouldn't like put it. I guess my feelings.
It's a little offensive. That's probably why,
like
right?
I don't know. It's almost offensive, and then you're like, but what am I offended about? It's just weird. It's like, why is there bubble gum stuck to his hand? That's odd. But yeah, my feelings on the album, I guess, are kind of similar to you guys. Like it could be kind of in the same league as that Elf album, the first Elf album cover, which is just absolutely horrible. But this one, it to me gets a lot of points just because it's so colorful and eye-catching. And that's what I really like about it. Just that blue with the bright red on it and the yellow. It stands out really good. If anything, like the Black Sabbath Born Again text is a little drab, kind of like it's like a kind of sickly yellow color.
Well, actually, you know what? Actually, I have the record here, and I actually find that kind of cool about it. It's actually like it's kind of gold.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like when it's on the actual cover there, it actually looks real. It also looks a lot more purple on there, but.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of like this particular one is more of a bluish color, but yeah, I've seen it. I've seen other. This is just a good quality high res version I found, but yeah, it can be like a darker purple sometimes, but basically, this was approved by Iommi. He takes the credit for that, and like we said, it's for whatever you say about it, it's definitely iconic and sticks out in your mind about this era and this this one album that this lineup had together. And
they even realized it on stage, right? You want to get into the
yeah, right. I mean, and
Don Arden's
they would act out, parts of the album, references to the album cover, the songs, all this crazy stuff going on, which is really cool. Like not a lot of that probably doesn't get done enough these days, where if you're going on tour to support an album, you've got this entire set and stage show to go along with it, which is pretty cool. It wasn't exactly The Wall, but it was very very cool.
Of The Wall.
Yeah, their version of The Wall. The Black
a little
Sabbath.
less conceptualized.
Yeah, a little looser concept album. But as Rye said, it was based on this cover of this medical journal called Mind Alive, and Steve Jewell says that he had this magazine. His parents bought it for him in 1968 to try to they wanted him to be educated, and they wanted him to kind of like have like a kind of a, it's like getting your kid like an educational toy, like, oh, he'll learn a lot by reading this. And there's from the interior there's a little shot of the baby and like the digestive system or something. So like, oh, we can imagine a young Steve Jewell learning about the digestive tract from this while looking at this weird shrieking, well, not weird, it's normal shrieking baby that's just been delivered, and probably just stuck in his head. And when he maybe was going through some old stuff, when he got this assignment, it was like, oh, I know what I could do with this. This same baby was used on the Depeche Mode album cover, New Life, Shout. I don't know anything about Depeche Mode, so funny. It's a more realistic picture of the baby, no claws, no horns, but then they took like a black bar and barred out the eyes, like they're preserving the baby's anonymity.
It's almost creepier, isn't it?
It is, right?
Yeah.
Now, like, you can't identify that baby now because of the black bars across his eyes.
No.
And then
looks
the
like
back
an apricot.
It does. His head looks like a dried apricot. The back cover is pretty standard, right? It's like typical heavy metal. You've got like the satanic star with a cross in the middle and all these like weird pagan looking icons on it. And then
Yeah, that's got "Speak of the Devil" written all over it, doesn't it? Like,
yeah,
it's like he
oh
just
yeah,
uses the
it looks
same
just like
palette.
it.
Yeah. It's
And
got.
I mean, look at these guys. I mean, they've never looked cooler. Gillan has never looked cooler.
Yeah, that's
Like,
when he had
look
his
at that
hair was just
mane.
like he looked like Cousin It almost. His hair was just everywhere.
Oh man.
Geezer though, look at Geezer.
Yeah.
One of those, like,
Yo, what does he
full-face
look like?
beards.
Geezer looks like what does he look? He looks like something or someone, but I can't put my finger on it. But he looks kind of goofy. He's like, he's like all cheeky and everything.
He looks kind of like a Muppet.
He looks like an SNL character that would be like, remember that one Christopher Walken did where he like talked to the camera and he's like, champagne?
Oh, champagne. Yeah,
Champagne?
he's got the little flower on his lapel, right?
Yeah.
Is that a poppy? I can't tell if it's like a poppy. Maybe it's taken around Veterans Day or something. He's got like the little poppy on his lapel. He's got his chest showing a little bit. Oh,
Yeah, he looks like he's just he's slaying the women. Ooh.
They couldn't stay away from geese.
What's going on with Iommi there? They must have caught him on a downswing. He looks a little.
Well, yeah, he's got a mullet.
Yeah.
Like
Bad
I like
hair
the
day.
I love the description though of the instruments though, because he's like Tony Iommi, guitars, guitar effects, flute. Like flute.
He must have picked up a little something when he was in Jethro Tull, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe he took some lessons.
But I mean, you look at
let's
this
see
like
if we can
album,
find
you know,
the flute on the in this
we're
freaking
gonna
mix.
Yeah,
But yeah, exactly. It's like you look at this album and you're like flute, you know, it's like you would just be like Tony Iommi, guitar effects, toy piano, you know, it's like what?
Geezer Butler, bass, oboe.
Bass effects. I like that.
Yeah, I know, bass and bass effect. I love when they
Yeah.
just try to really stretch out what they do on an album.
Just
Guitar,
pump it up,
acoustic guitar, 12-string guitar, electric guitar. We get it. You played the guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
Enough.
Boy.
Sometimes I'll even bring up the brand of the guitar, you know, like I played the Gibson guitar. Oh, okay. Then we've got the record there. I don't know which pressing yours is. This is a Vertigo.
Yeah, mine's a WB.
Oh,
This is a Canadian one.
this is a Dutch pressing I've got. I also have a German one here
Look
for
at
some
that,
reason.
yeah.
But looks kind of cool. It's like
I hear the Japanese one is the one to gun for if you're a vinyl freak. As always,
yeah.
They do it right, but apparently it's got a bit more fidelity.
Then you've got the lyrics insert, which are very stylized and almost a little hard to read. Like if you zoom in on them, like if you're trying to follow along, it's a little tricky.
I was gonna say that I brought mine out so I could like read along with lyrics. I'm like, is this in like Sanskrit or what is this?
Well, I started.
Yeah, mine's actually different colors, but
it's the same font.
Yeah, that
same font. Yeah.
Yeah.
canary yellow background doesn't really make it easy to read, for crying out loud.
No. I decide I usually, if there's a lyric sheet, I'll pull it up and have it on my other monitor if I could follow along. But I said, screw that. I went to Joe's website and just pulled up pulled it up there. There it is, typed out in a plain font that I can read. So that'll be much easier. And then we've got this part here. uh, recorded at the manor, all that sort of information about the production. And then at the bottom, it's funny, it says mastered on Ampex tapes. I'm surprised it didn't drive them out of business.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's the tapes they
I
use?
wouldn't want my name associated with this.
Just call, hey, do you have any Ampex tapes? Burn them. We're getting a different brand. But as we'll get into, it wasn't.
Oh, look at
Ampex's
that.
fault.
I can actually see this there. Malcolm Cope is on there, or Coop. I don't know how you say
Oh,
it.
there you
That's
go.
the drummer I was talking about earlier. So there you go.
Oh, cool.
Confirmed
it's like,
that he was involved.
it's another one, like the font they chose to use. Now we're doing yellow on a black background instead of black and a yellow background. And with that font, it's like kind of hard to read.
Yeah, I'm just surprised they didn't go with like pink font on a purple background. That's really nice and easy to read.
Pink on orange.
Really easy on the eyes. Yeah, exactly.
It reminds you of like you go to like a GeoCities site back in the day, and they choose some background. You're like, oh my god, you'd have to like highlight or cut and paste it into a Word document so you could actually read what it said.
Yeah.
All right. So technically, it's recorded at the Manor, which was Richard Branson's home/recording studio, right? It was like kind of like studio in his house. There was Paul Clark was listed as album coordination. He did visual work on Mob Rules, Live Evil, and this album he's credited as having been in management. Engineers Robin Black, who'd worked with Jethro Tull, Cat Stevens, and Murray Head. He actually did Murray Head's first solo album, a little Jesus Christ Superstar connection there. And then, of course, we know David and Don Arden's father and son team. Don Arden being Sharon's sister and Ozzy's brother-in-law. Probably not going over to their house for Thanksgiving. Are they still like not on speaking terms? You know, like what's the recent deal with them?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't heard anything recent about them.
I can't imagine Sharon like lets something go very easily. I can't imagine she's just like, oh, that's old news. Like, forget it. Let's come here, give me a big hug. You know.
Yeah.
I'm sure the grudge is still.
What makes you say that?
Yeah. What makes you think she holds a grudge? Yeah.
No reason. I personally love Sharon. I think she's great.
That's good because I do too. If you were gonna start Sharon bashing, I would have been like, right.
she's the best. I would never hear a bad word about her from me. Then technician Peter Resty, he's credited as being a personal technician to Black Sabbath. So, okay, so now we got all the
Coke dealers. That's all those
personal assistant.
All that management is just people shoveling coke into them.
Listen, I manage the what do you call them? The guitars. I make sure they're doing good. Is that one got strings? Got to wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you're good to go.
So the lines are going in.
Should we talk about the mix like after the album? But should we talk about it before we get into the songs? Like, what do you think? There's some to be said about.
We might as well get into them and then talk about it as we're going, because it's kind of like. For me, you have to kind of like pick out certain parts that are the real abrasive ones. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in Nibby's kit that's just not cool. So, I mean, there's some things that Iommi said about like the fact that one of the speakers was blown or something. He heard a different mix, and then when they were doing the playback or whatever.
Yeah, like the album cover, there's a lot of like, oh, that was his fault, or that's that part was him, or whatever. So, I guess we can get into some of the things. So, so a couple quick points is one is they were all kind of all over the place. Nobody was really overseeing this. Robin Black was the engineer, whereas Black Sabbath produced it. That sometimes works out really well, sometimes not so much. And basically, it probably would have worked out a lot better if they just said, okay, Robin, you mix this and let us have it. That's part of it. The other part is Ian Gillan either accidentally or purposefully blew out the tweeters on the monitor speakers, so they didn't hear what was truly happening on the tape. And then the other thing to mention before we get into it is apparently, they had done like whatever the master pressing is for this. I'm probably getting the terminology wrong, so you vinyl geeks can correct me. But they got like the master pressing for it, and it was the way basically you're supposed to take that and use it right away. It wasn't. It was kind of left sitting for a while, and that kind of made it warp or distort in some small way, so that when they went and actually pressed the records from it, it was the sound had changed a little. So that kind of those are a few factors that counted into it. So probably we can get into a lot more, but that's kind of the basics of the mix before we get into the songs. So
well, then why does Gillan's vocals sound so awesome? And then you could definitely tell there's certain tracks that are messed, you know.
Yeah.
So it must have happened at the board or somewhere between.
And I'm not like I often will there'll be like unofficial releases by bands or like mixtapes that bands put together that where the sound quality is iffy at best, and I always, if the songs are there and they're good quality, I always really enjoy it. Like, I'm not like an audiophile that has to have everything pristine. I can certainly recognize that this sounds like, if you stack it up against, you know, whatever Mob Rules and then play Seventh Star after it, you can tell this is not in the same league as far as it just doesn't sound like professionally polished.
Yeah.
But to me, like, it's all about the songs and how the songs make you feel more so than the sound quality. So
Exactly. Yeah.
all right, so I'll play this on here and let me know if you need a little more volume, but we'll get into the first track, which is Trashed.
Oh, we're gonna need lots of volume. Geezer's just cooking off that top, eh? I like how it starts high. Very coded lyrics, right? Just like ominous, you know, it could be about anything.
It's always hard to tell with Ian Gillan what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That vocal effect on his voice right there is always like really chilling.
It is, yeah. He's so good at like just being on that cusp of being completely out of control, but like, and then he like reins it in enough that you're like, he knows what he's doing. It's amazing. Just stretching those consonants.
This song's got such a weird arrangement to it. Like all the different parts, the way that they, like, it doesn't start where you think it should.
Yeah, and when it goes into that part, it's just so like, it's seamless, but it's like, what's Bill doing back there? Just, whoa.
Yeah, and that is where you're,
It's pretty good though.
Yeah.
his drums on this are incredible, but a lot of it does get lost.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's sick, eh? With Iomi. Oh, you know they love that.
Yeah, that's an old trick, but it's always a good one.
It always works. Just, yeah, I'm not into Iomi's lead tone on this album though. It's like daggers.
Yeah, it's messy.
It's pretty harsh, yeah.
Yeah. More so the tone more so than what he's
Yeah,
playing.
the
He's
playing's
ripping
great.
it there.
No, I mean, it's like, you can tell it's like classic Iomi. I mean, he's, you know, that's definitely like, you know, signature solo, but it's just like like you said, yeah, the tone is just like daggers.
It's got the vibrato, but it's lost because it's just like that high. Yeah, he's got the wipeout going in there. But it gets lost, yeah. That part is like huge, but
It
just
almost
kind of
reminds me
a
of like,
wash in the background.
like-
It's not.
it reminds me of like Burn, where Pace is just all over the place, like just playing a crazy drum beat, but still somehow holding it together.
Yeah,
But
it's mixed a little better on Burn now. Yeah.
just a smidge better.
So good. Yeah, I mean, I listen to some lo-fi doom shit, but like that's just piercing.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's all. I mean,
Actually,
always,
the way it sounds kind of makes me think of like Ritchie's playing on the first couple of albums. It's just kind of like you just stand there with the guitar, like just having a seizure or something. It's like, what the hell are you playing?
Yeah,
Like it sounds like messy. Just like I mean, I know Tony wasn't always the most precision player, but I mean, this was not well.
Yeah, but he has those bits, like his vibrato's huge, his trills are huge, and they're lost with that tone, Like
Yeah.
anytime you can hear he's doing them, but like it's just whoosh, there's just that extra, and it's breaking up a lot, So it's lo-fi. It's lo-fi.
It was definitely lo-fi. Well, before we get into the ratings, there's a lot about this song. So obviously the song is pretty literal. So if you read the lyrics, you'll get the story. But apparently Ian Gillan and Peter Resty, who's mentioned as the guitar technician in the lyrics, who he mentions by name, apparently they had just gotten 4 brand new cars given to the guys in the band as rentals, I believe. And I don't know how this works, but Gillan sails his boat to this pub and Peter drives Bill Ward's car to the pub to meet him. They have a million drinks. Then Ian, I guess, sails his boat back and he drives the car back. And when they get back, Ian Gillan decides he wants to take the car for a spin, brings it to this go-kart track at Richard Branson's house, driving it around, gets crazy. And it's a right-hand drive and they're used to left-hand. And then they end up
yeah, like that factors into it when you've had that much to
when you've had that much to drink. It's oh yeah. If it was a regular if it was on the right side, I would have been fine. But yeah, they flipped the car, and apparently from the story in Martin Popoff's book, he flips the car and it's on its top. So that's what the line, "the ground was in my sky," is because he was upside down in the car. So I guess the car is spinning around and stops just short of going into this old abandoned swimming pool that was filled with like old tires and like rainwater. So Pete says the pool was filled with old tires and debris and stuff. We never would have been able to open the doors for us to get out. We would have drowned probably. So if the car had gone any further, it would have went upside down into this pool, and they probably would have just been stuck in there and drowned, which would have been like this horrible, tragic story. But luckily, it's just Gillan going, "Ah, that was funny. I'm gonna write a song about it," and probably taking no lessons away from that. And apparently, they're upside down in the car, and the gas tank is severed, and there's gasoline dripping all over them. Ian Gillan's got a lit cigarette, and he said that like a drop of gasoline fell onto his cigarette and put the cigarette out rather than igniting, because apparently that's what happens. It needs some sort of spark. So luckily all around, this episode ended a lot better than it probably could have or should have. And Tipper Gore, when she was on her whole PMRC thing in the 80s, used this song as an example that glorified drug and alcohol abuse. And don't like Tipper Gore, don't like the PMRC, but she's got a point there. You got to hand it to Tipper. It's hard to argue that one. So
no, fuck Tipper Gore.
yeah, you're right. Yeah. So now we get to the rating portion of it. Who wants to go first? Rating Trash, the opening track.
I'll go. I give that like 4.5, like, because my rating system, like, I usually go I only do 0.5s, but like I know there's a couple of 5s that I like a little bit more. But for a kickoff song, like, you can't beat that energy that right off the top. And actually, I don't know if I think Zero the Hero was the better single, because it kind of has a bit of a sludge to it, and when they chopped it down a bit. But to have that as one of the ones that's out there to show off where they're going with things, like just the raw power that Gillan's bringing to the lineup there and how it's affecting the other guys. I think it's a killer track.
Awesome. John, what do you think?
I'm gonna give. I feel like I'm trying to rate the songs based on the song, how good the song is.
Mhm.
But I can't get my head around like giving it more than a 3.5. I agree. It's a great opening track and there's some good stuff to it, but it's like uh, a, just a lot of the production on the album just kind of ruins the songs for me. Um, like in a way, you know what I mean? It's like the not to get into we can get into the album as a whole maybe later, but it's like, there's something, endearing about the production, just it being really kind of, you know, um, just this sludgy like metal production, but sometimes like the guitar solos are just like, really annoying to listen to when you're, just thinking like how it should sound, but it's not sounding that way.
Yeah, that's it.
Whereas, the bass is like really good. Actually, I've never really listened to this in headphones, so the bass was really a lot more prominent than I thought, or that I previously realized. So I thought that was good, and I actually love Bill Ward's drums during the his drum rolls or his fills, whatever you call them, during the bridge. I think that's really a great part to the song. And of course, Gillan, as we've talked about before, is like at his peak around this time. So I mean, he's just full on metal, like stuff you've never heard before from him. So
All right.
but decent song, pretty good.
I'll meet you guys in the middle and give this one a 4. I think it's also a great opener. I always just remember the first time I heard this, because I'd heard about this album and I'd heard about that Gillan and Hughes had both been in Sabbath and just been kind of like, probably heard it from you when we were in high school and just like, really? And then didn't think much about it and never really sought it out. I don't know why. I think I just figured, oh, is it in the 80s? Nah, never mind. I'll pass. And then when I eventually checked it out, I think I've talked about it on the show before where I never gave Technical Ecstasy or Never Say Die a chance because all the authorities and people around me were like, "Oh, those albums are terrible," because they had probably heard other people say it and they repeated what they heard said. And then one day I finally was like, "I want to hear this Technical Ecstasy." And I got myself a copy and I was just like, "Wow, I love this. I think this album's great. This is to me is like more great Sabbath." So I was like annoyed at myself that I'd probably gone 10 years just ignoring this album when it was great. And then I decided to kind of listen to some more of the stuff. And when I got to Born Again, it was just like, wow, this is exactly what I would think that Black Sabbath, the original 3 guys in Black Sabbath with Ian Gillan fronting them, would sound like. Like it's exactly everything that those two would bring to the table. And I remember instantly just really loving it. Not really thinking too much about the production or anything, just really digging that sound of those two sounds combining. Um, it's great.
Yeah, I remember. Actually, I heard this one. Like, I obviously didn't hear it when it came out. I was born when Born Again came out. So
You were born the first time.
yeah, I was born for the first time. Yeah, I couldn't even get born again. So, but I definitely like when I went on a big Deep Purple kick in like, early 2000 or whatever, and I was on the Lime Wires there and stuff. I remember seeing that like, how they would fill in their own like metadata and stuff like that.
Oh,
It would come up as like Deep Purple, Black Sabbath thing, like, and
Yeah.
there was like a little like grouping of ones, and it had that, and I think it was Danger Zone, I think from Seven Star or something like that. They kind of like paired them together as like this,
okay.
the super group Sabbath. So I didn't really know that they were albums at that time. I was into like the Aussie stuff, obviously, but at that point I hadn't gone deep into anything. I didn't even listen to Dio stuff really. But I did have that, like those couple of tracks, and I had them on my MP3 player. And I remember Trash. I was like, this is just wild. Because, yeah, it was definitely not a remix version at that point, too. Like, we're probably listening to like the 2004 remix or whatever, right? Like the deluxe edition.
I checked the deluxe edition versus the other one, and I honestly couldn't tell much of a difference. So I just went with the deluxe edition.
Well, it might have been just a bad, with the original like MP3s and stuff, like they were just all over the place for quality.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
So it was even more crazy and
It was
just
like 64 bit rate or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can hear like the flange. Oh, there's a lot of flange on the drums on this song.
Yeah. Just constantly panning, yeah. but I thought it was wild, you know, like, so it always like, it's stuck in my head at least that happened. And then when I actually figured out the whole album and stuff, so I came to it a different way than a lot of people, even your guys' age, like, you know, like you probably came to it a bit after its release or whatever too, right?
No, not too much. Like I said, I ignored it for a long time, so I probably didn't get into it probably until about the same time that you did. Because like I said, I had my Sabbath collection when I was in high school, and like in the early '90s, I got all my Sabbath stuff, and then I just hung tight throughout all the '90s, just being like, well, because everyone told me that's all you need is the first 6 Sabbath albums, and you're good. I was like, okay, cool. And then when after that, it was probably around that Napster time. Although I don't think I got this off of Napster. I think this was a purchase. But I remember just getting Technical Ecstasy, and then that opened a whole new window to me. That was just basically like, don't listen to what other people are saying. Just form your own opinion. It's just so much of that stuff, and just like everything else, just like the mix of this album, just like the album cover, everyone says it's crap, so you got to believe it's crap. And I don't necessarily disagree with those theories, but I think it's good to check it out for yourself and see what you think, and because you miss out on a lot of good stuff if you.
It's great in these podcast formats where we're kind of forced to do that with certain eras and stuff like that. Like for me, I mean, it was everything like Dio forward, and I specifically was like, I'm not going to listen ahead. I'm going to listen in real time, but like in a crushed amount of time. So I know a lot of the people who listened in actual real time, like, you know, like they were waiting 2 years for an album, and then something comes out that's different, and then they're like, yeah. But for me, it's like I'm seeing the progression, and like there's stuff I'm not liking, there's stuff I'm liking, but it's quick, you know. Like we have a real gift of being in the generation that we are, that we can listen to everything that way, you know.
Yeah, like we talk about a lot of times at the show, like we would have to go to some weird import shop and hope they had what you were looking for to get a lot of these albums back then, and now you can have them all instantly, which is really cool. All right, so that brings us to the next track.
We're gonna bring it down now.
Instrumental number. Just gonna bring it down after that rocker. And this track is called Stonehenge.
Stonehenge. The Druids. Are you guys hearing that? Or is that just me? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, let me know if you need any more volume. This is something you'd usually expect to like begin an album with.
Yeah.
More so.
And they kind of do that 1-2 punch later with the instrumental. But this one, I find I'm not really big on the placement of it. It's a little, it's borderline effects on volume 4, but effects is at least in the right spot. This one just kind of sitting between 2 barn burners. I don't know.
This really reminds me of like a Pink Floyd song.
Or like the background of like a video game or something, like, you know, like one of those ones where you're like building cities. SimCities. Yeah, SimCities.
It would be a space video game, I think.
SimCity in space.
Sim space.
The heartbeat's kind of badass. I always love a good heartbeat.
Maybe that's why I think it sounds like Floyd.
Yeah. And I think this one is pretty much all Jeff Nichols, right? Like, but there might be, Geezer might be doing some shit there.
It sounds like there's some guitar swells in there, but
yeah,
it's got to be mostly Nichols.
Yeah, there's definitely a pitch wheel in effect there. Are you going to transition right in? Because that's the only thing that makes this work.
Well, we actually are keeping it separate, so.
Okay.
It's hard not to listen to the We did the same thing last week with Gillan, where you don't go into the kicker there, but all right. Historically, these kinds of tracks are hard to rank. Do you guys want to rank it now, or do you want to listen to the next track and then rank them how they go together?
Well, I think how they go together does factor into my ranking somewhat, but like I said, this one is a little too, just coming at it, I like 2 heavy hitters right off the bat personally, and then I like to sink into my more vibey shit. So I would have just scrapped this one, I think. At least the placement of it. You're right, like as an opener, it's kind of cool. And the way that they cut it down, there's an extended version, which nothing much more happens. But
yeah, if that was a Pink Floyd song, it would be 17 minutes long of that. So
yeah. I
True.
think the extended version is like 5 minutes of that. What's that one? Like 2?
two, just under 2, I think.
So it's a nice pad. I guess if I'm going to rank it on its own merits, it would be below. It would be a 2 or something like that.
Do we want to do the ranks now or after
sorry.
the next? What do you think?
Well, we can add my 2 to whatever my next one is.
Oh.
What do you think, Joe? Now or move on?
I mean, we could. No, we could. I mean, I just ranked it, so I may as well.
All right.
But I mean, we could talk about it after the other song, because I mean, I actually have some thoughts on it, which I thought it was. I actually thought it was kind of cool. Like usually, these in between tracks are kind of like a throwaway, but I thought it kind of set a mood. It's like it kind of made me think of like the 80s version of like the guitar instrumentals that Tony would do in the 70s in between songs, like
right. Laguna
like
Sunrise
Orchid and stuff like that. Yeah, Laguna. So yeah, it's like the 80s keyboard version of that, and it's kind of like, really doomy and out there, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to like screw up like production on a keyboard. Like some of the keyboard only stuff on this is like the only stuff that kind of sounds like has some clarity to it. I agree that the placement isn't great, because it just kind of like you're just like the first track really hits you and then it like immediately slows down into like this like 2.5 minute instrumental, which is just kind of like whoa. But
and then you see how it hits you again, the way that they come out of it, like it's just a little too, it's like it's almost like it resets again, whereas if it was positioned properly, like it could kind of it could bring stuff down. And then like even that going into like Born Again or something, like going into the title track, or like you could pair it with something else, I think. But I agree with you as far as like
or
the fact that it's like a keyboard version, so it's like an 80s version of that kind of like instrumental break, and it's very like time stamped, but in a good way. It's pretty badass tones in there.
And if you think about the episode we did last week with the Gillan album, it was kind of like a weird choice, because it's like if you would put this at the beginning of this album, it would have been weird in the same way that the Japanese album started with that really kind of soft keyboard thing, and then went right into like this rocker, so it's like this almost kind of makes that same I don't want to say mistake, but it's kind of made the same pattern, only they just kind of like the placement of it was kind of weird, being the second song. But that notwithstanding, I would give it a 3.5. I kind of liked it a lot more than I thought, or that I remember. So
I'm going to mirror that 3.5. I like, usually the default for a song like this for me is like a 3. Like, well, it's a song, it's a little nondescript. It's just, it's a filler, but not in a bad way. Just kind of it's something setting a mood. But in this case, I think I like it a little bit more than one of those tracks. And those things always have places on albums, so it's hard to rank them on their own merits. So with that, we can get right into the next track, Disturbing the Priest.
Five. Sorry.
You've been hinting at that already. It's so like disorienting, the song.
So good. And this one, like the transition of the parts, like when it sinks right into it, it's beautiful.
Billboard cymbals sound terrible on the song.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's rattling a silverware drawer.
Yeah, is that the hi-hat?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. You might just have a bunch of spoons in a sock or something. I don't know.
This groove is like beyond sick here. Like
Geezer sounds
locking in. Those swells too, huh?
Yeah, his guitar sounds great on this song.
It's because it has more dynamics, I guess.
But like Gillan's vocals here and like the background noises and everything, it's like the epitome of what like evil 80s metal is all about.
Yes. And he breaks out into that high voice so perfectly too. It still sits in that bed, you know? Like he switched his entire tone.
Yeah.
Like you don't notice it. It's not like it's so good. So much control.
And just that kind of like moaning in the background, that droning.
Yeah. And Ward's really reserved there. He's just punching. You know, usually he's all over the toms on that kind of part. He's just it's that sober Bill. What do you think of like the pun? I think it's hilarious. It's like a disturbing priest.
Oh yeah, I mean it's classic Gillan. Although it was this one written by was this one written by Geezer?
I think it's Gillan. I know that it's about a true story, right? That there was a priest that was next to the manor.
Yeah, this one
Came over.
says the lyrics were written by Geezer.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that.
Which is funny because the pun sounds super Gillan.
Yeah, but Geezer's all about that too. In his solo work, anyway, he does that a lot.
Snare drum sounds terrible too, man. I don't remember it sounding that bad on Trashed.
Yeah, it's more. It's just because the part's so punchy on the snare that you just notice it.
But Iommi's rhythm guitar sounds good.
Yeah. The bass sounds really good on the
Bass
headphones
sounds
here.
good. Gillan's vocals sound good.
The main riff when because it's gonna come back to it here soon. It's so cool. Those harmonics, like that's so different. I mean,
Yeah.
I always think like,
Different for Iommi.
yeah, like it's incredible. Like it sounds ahead of its time a little bit too. Sounds more 90s kind of like. Kind of cool too. Like it sounds like a Megadeth riff or something, like you know, like Conjuring or something like that. That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There you go.
Like an earlier Megadeth track.
Yeah, he sells there or something. And you know the connection with that Ian Gillan band's the Scarabus Pie. He does the same vocal thing. Let's
Oh,
try
right.
the
Yes.
Scarabus Pie. Or whatever.
That's right, yeah.
That always stood out to me when I listened to that.
I always noticed that. Yeah. I always thought that was a cool reference to that.
That's the best. Just cranks the vice up at the end here. I don't hear any note problems.
Yeah, I know, right?
If he does, he's ignoring them.
Well, I think stop losing his mind. He comes into this.
It sounds like he's doing like different takes of laughs. He's like, you can use one of these. I'll just do
Yeah.
it.
Just use one of them and like, no, we're gonna use all of them.
Yeah, back to back.
Yeah, I mean the vocal node thing. I mean, I don't think Ian Gillan ever took care of his voice, unfortunately, because he's that's what he had those vocal nodes, and he's just coming back in and doing stuff like this, and with doing it properly, I'm sure it would have been fine. But He's someone that just went all out for a long time and eventually kind of caught up with him. But
Yeah,
again,
those boys didn't monitor their shit very much either back then too.
no, no.
Didn't have the technology, but
And
also I don't think they had the want
Gillan
to do.
famously hated monitors. He didn't
Oh
want
yeah,
monitor. He didn't like them. I was like, how could you not sing with? He's always like putting his finger in his ear and trying
that's
to hear.
right.
It's
Yeah.
like, what? Just have a monitor, man. make it a
And
lot
then
easier. I mean, I have much more limited stage singing experience than him, but I was like always like, if I can't hear myself, I'm it's done. I can't go. I can't do anything if I can't hear myself. I'm also not Ian Gillan, so there you go.
Far from it. Far from it.
So the story behind this one is that they were performing, and they had a rehearsal space that was right next to a church, and they were having choir practice at the church, and Black Sabbath's just blowing the doors off with their music. So the priest comes over and knocks on the door and is like, do you guys mind turning it down a little bit because it's a little loud for a choir practice? And apparently Ian Gillan was just like, oh, hey, what time? Oh, I'm sorry, vicar. Like, what time do do you guys do your choir practice? Like, oh, we do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays from this time to this time or whatever. And he's like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, at those times we won't do it. We won't do any loud music. And they got to talking, and then they met up with him like at the pub later on and got drunk together with him and forged a friendship. So classic Gillan story. Not as doomy and metally as it sounds from the the song itself. But a funny story nonetheless. Okay, so what do you guys? Well, we know. I think someone may have shown their cards a little early.
Yeah, I buried the lead on that one.
So
yeah, I'm giving it the full
5.
shebang.
All right.
Just such a unique song. I mean, it's maniacal, it's crazy, but it's also like got some cool dynamics in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to see that. I love to see stuff being pushed to extremes, but also like being aware that, not everybody can listen to like, full death metal. Like, it's still accessible enough that it's got the groove in it, and it's just sinister. It's lovely, lovely little number.
Awesome. John, what do you think?
Well, surprisingly, I feel like I'm giving this one higher than I thought. I give this one 4. I echo a lot of what Rye says. Is like it's I think sinister is a great word for it. It's just this really unique track, very sinister. I think is a great way, especially that part with the kind of the droning background noises, and Gillan with like the layered vocals is just really creepy. It's like it's stuff that he's never done before. I mean, he's always done like really quirky, unusual stuff, but I mean, it's just like you never hear him go like this full on metal. Like, I mean, you hear him go like rock, you hear him like, just screaming his brains out. But I mean, he's like, he's literally doing in this song. He's just like the most Ian Gillan you can be like on this song right here.
Banshee.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's crazy, So I mean, if you want to hear this guy do metal, like this is it, folks.
Here's your fix.
But yeah, it's really, it works. It works on this song.
I will also give this one a 4. It's a weird song. I mean, it works really well. It's got those doomy elements. Very hard to look past the terrible production on the drums. I gotta say, but it's a great. But everything else is sounding really good. It's almost like on every track they picked one instrument to ruin. We're only 2 tracks.
What did you say? The drums? It sounded the cymbals sounded like what, a drawer full of silverware.
I mean, literally sounds like when you open my silverware drawer. Just like that rattly, just all, a bunch of cheap metal forks rattling around together in a drawer.
You're going to be making dinner and you're going to be like maniacally laughing. Just pulling the drawer.
What's for dinner tonight? I mean, chicken pie.
Who wants chicken?
Scarabus pie.
Scarabus pie. Or if you just
Scarabus pot pie.
If you took like your drawer of silverware and emptied it on the snare drum and then just sit it, or just filled the hi-hats, like put some netting around the hi-hats and filled the hi-hats with silverware or something. It just,
oh man,
terrible. But very cool song, very, very doomy, very dark. and it's so funny that the actual story is just so. I mean, I always thought it was a funny story, like, oh, they were disturbing a priest, so they called the song "Disturbing the Priest," which sounds much more sinister than the actual story. And then when you hear the actual details of the story, it's Ian Gillan being extremely gracious to him and saying, "Oh, we won't do it during your choir practice time. Now let's go to the pub and have a drink." And they're all buddy with him. It's not even the story you'd expect, with some like priest being like real, like you'd see in like an 80s video. The priest would knock on the door and like wag his finger at them, and they'd be like, "Too bad, old man, we're gonna play even louder." And the priest would be like blown away by the sound of the guitars or whatever. But
and it plays into kind of like Sabbath. You mean like After Forever and stuff like that, where it's like they're viewed as a satanic band, so they do like a very Christian song or something like that, and they show like some of them are devout Catholics and stuff like that. Like,
but you feel like
they like that play. They like that weird kind of like assumption that it's really evil, but they can be themselves as well within that and be like, take the piss out of it almost,
Yeah. All right.
And then you just figure like the priest at the end of it is like just winds up being like the guy on the cover of Holy Diver,
You don't like it,
just
old man?
Whipped it.
And whips it.
Just get whipped into an ocean.
All right. So now next up, we got this very interesting dynamic on this first side. You've got like a track, an instrumental, a track, an instrumental, and then another track. So here we go with the second instrumental on the album, The Dark. Sounds like a demon with indigestion.
Whale calls. Is this the interlude in No More Tears? It's just a hand in the bush. That's all Geezer too, I think. I've read that or heard that. That's probably why he's credited
keyboard?
for bass effects. No, it's this one.
Or this bass effects.
Yeah. That fade in's pretty badass. I like where it fits.
Yeah, it's kind of, we should have just kind of looked at it as one track too, but
yeah.
I think because this one was like less musical than Stonehenge. It was just kind of like a bunch of like bass growling, bass effects growling. It wasn't NIB, but
well, should we just go right into Zero the Hero then?
Yeah, with that one we'll lump it in.
I think
let's just do it right into Zero the Hero.
Right into Paradise City. I mean Zero the Hero.
Cool switch.
On the guitar, you can almost hear Ian Gillan's vocals.
Yeah, right. Listen to that riff. That's just...
Oh, those bass hits too. Bass effects. Just earning that credit.
I love it. It just sounds like almost like Iommi's playing like a little behind the beat. Like he's like a little off. Like he's like it's almost like he's trying to slow it down, but nobody else is coming with him. But it works so well.
I wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, you got Bill Ward back there. He knows how to operate a pocket, so I bet you it was intentional.
The really grinding riff, just so heavy.
Gillan's very, I don't know if I, like his vocals are very, they're syncopated, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if it might be, it's a little monotonous because of the length of the song. I just know ahead of time. I always think that like it's not Gillan's strongest moment. If I'm going to criticize something about an amazing song, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a much longer song than you think.
Yeah.
Kind of like the backwards
flanges are ridiculous. Yeah.
Or the flange, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. wonder
I
how
always
much
thought that
time
that
they
was, like-
spent just sitting with the song and like adding those little things, you know?
Yeah. But that was bass effects. That wasn't a keyboard. Those hits.
Those the big dong, like the church bell kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah, I think it might even be like
Yeah.
an 8-string.
I always thought that it was a keyboard. I was really, now I'm kind of getting it more what the bass effects were,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, they talk a
Yeah,
lot
that's for
about
sure.
they were using these metal plates. I don't know if it was it might have been just for the Stonehenge track where they were banging these metal plates and then dunking them into water to get that effect,
Oh yeah, I heard that.
that gonging effect. And Iommi saying something like, "Oh, well, nowadays you just press a button on the keyboard and you could make that sound, but back then we had to get creative and do stuff like that." It almost, I always think about this song with that, but I don't think that they used it on this song.
Pretty sure that was based on this one.
Was it bass or bass effects?
Bass effects.
The other thing that Weezer played.
I wonder if he gets paid extra for how many credits he has on it.
He gets paid twice as much if he
yeah,
adds
gets a
bass
full
effects.
studio.
Yeah, here we go with another solo here. So
This one's not as abrasive.
no,
It's kind of cool. Still stands out, but
yeah,
Yeah,
Iommi
but
always
it's-
had such a great tone, but like
The tone on this album just sucks.
I
But
mean,
this
great-
is a lot better than the first.
It's great for the rhythm, but it's the leads really that are the problem.
No, the leads, like it's very like high endy,
Book of Taliesin.
like really shrill, you know?
Book of Tales.
No, but I mean it's definitely standing out a lot more in this song. Like it's a lot better. Like you can hear him play more.
Yeah. Yeah, with Iommi, you got to hear that movement, you know, like, and if the effect is breaking apart too much, you're missing parts of like his trills and stuff. Because I think some of
But I mean, at least
Iommi's
you're
best
getting a lot
lead stuff
more
is
here.
in the Dio era, right? So you think about
Mhm. Oh,
looking
yeah.
like Mob Rules like over and over, those guitar tones he's get on that, and then this comes after. It's kind of
Everything and the footage I've seen from this particular tour, he was on fire. Him and Gillan were both at the top of their game on this tour somehow, despite all the cocaine and alcohol and every other thing going on. The live
Despite it,
footage
or
sounds
because of.
amazing. Or maybe,
Just
maybe.
because of.
It doesn't sound like a coked out song. It always sounds like it's going a little too slow, and maybe that's just because growing up, I heard Paradise City first, so I'm more used to that tempo being a little faster. Because let's face it, it's the same riff.
Yep.
I love that riff.
What does he say?
Sitting there with your balls in your head full of nothing.
Something about eating raw liver too.
The love a duck and way, you're walking around. There's some tremendous lyrics in here.
But the love a duck and way, you're walking around the city with your balls and your head full of nothing. Love a duckin'.
Love a duck and
They should have showed that to Tipper Gore and said, "See, they're censoring themselves. You should like this."
there's some weird percussion stuff in here.
It's
like you bring-
congas.
Yeah, maybe. Running it through the same shitty mics that Bill Ward was using then. Nate's getting out a spoon.
He's got the wood. He's got the empty silverware drawer because he put that all in the hi hat. Now he's just rattling a wooden spoon around the drawer. Well, they did like on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. They just grabbed a bunch of stuff from the kitchen, banged on pots and pans and stuff for breaking the girl. Get
Yeah.
that sound? Maybe they did. They trying the same thing here. It just didn't work out quite as well.
Well, you know that one of the it makes me think of one of these. Heard it somewhere. Judas Priest story from I think it was Metal Gods. Are you guys familiar with
No, is that a book or?
the song?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, Metal Gods.
Where at the end, where at the end of it, they were like trying to mimic like, like an army of like robots like marching like this. And if I remember the story right, was that they got like a box of silverware and they just kind of went cha-chunk, cha-chunk, cha-chunk like that to kind of like simulate like the feeling of like, robots like marching in unison. And it was like, it's a pretty cool story, but it's kind of goes back to that necessity is the mother of invention type of thing. Like back then when they had to kind of like Mickey Mouse it for everything, that's what some of this really cool stuff came up with, as opposed to just hitting a button these days.
Yeah.
You came up with some really cool stuff, just kind of like being like, oh, what do we do? And then you just get wildly creative and use whatever is at your fingertips. And
Yeah, do you remember
you don't really
the
have that
Metallica
anymore.
documentary where for the Black Album, what was it called? Year and a half in the life.
Mhm.
They have like a scene where they have like one day where it's like the play day and they just bring in a bunch of stuff and like Lars is just there like hitting a bunch of silverware and stuff like that. And James has like a Winchester rifle and I just think that does every band do that at one point during the process?
I think they have to. I mean, it is really cool
Maybe.
doing that kind of old school Foley work. It brings some interesting ideas and organic things to that you wouldn't get from just plugging into the board with whatever like effects processor you have.
Yeah, for sure. Or just do a bunch of cocaine and run out of guitar with your crucifix on naked like they did in Volume 4. You get the same effect.
Exactly. All right. So the dark, we got to tackle the dark. It's hard to, for me, it's hard to kind of,
Yeah,
I always wonder when they have something like that, that's really just a 45-second intro to the song and fades into the song, why they would even credit that as being its own song to begin with. There's really not much going on in it.
It's funny because that's with like the old records, they did that with like NIB and they had basically, and they separated it all out, but it's all part of the same kind of track, obviously. It kind of makes sense in the CD world if you want to cater to people to be able to skip something. Yes, but I don't understand it at this point.
To me, it's a 45-second intro. Like, you can't, you have to skip through that. Like, oh, I can't make it through this. I gotta. If it was a long intro, I mean,
it might be an artistic thing that they just wanted separated. Like Geezer was just super.
Like you said, Sabbath is big on that. They've always dividing up their tracks into all these parts. So what do you guys think of the dark?
I think it fits in perfectly. Like as far as it fitting in, I guess even more so than Stonehenge into Disturbing the Priest, because you could basically put anything quiet in front of Disturbing the Priest, and the way it hits in, I mean, it's going to be effective. But this one, it's got that fade in. It's so I'd give it like, are we rating it like separately?
Sure.
We'll give that one a 3.
All right. John?
I'll do the same. Just because I'm just really impressed with now I know it's like bass effects, so that makes it kind of cooler.
Paice to read your liner notes.
I'll give it a 3 as well. I feel like if it didn't fade into the song, if that whole thing was isolated, I'd probably give it a 1 or a 2, because it's just kind of like, what is this? And then, but as being a brief little intro into the song, I think it works pretty well. Now, what about the song proper, Zero the Hero? Where are we going with that one?
Yeah, it's up there. I give it a 4, I think. It's a little, I like Trash is a little bit more hard hitting, so I'm just going to put it a little bit behind Trash, but yeah, 4. Like the riff is heavy as anything. It's just a little long, I think, but can't fault them for that. I mean, if you find that groove, I'd go on that for days too.
For sure. John?
Yeah, I'll go with the 4 also. This is definitely it's a great song. You make a great point too, Nate, about it. Kind of like, sludging along, like the riff is almost behind the beat or whatever. Like it feels like it's always trying to catch up. And I always, felt that or thought it, but it's like never, talked about it. And it's yeah, there's another song where it's like it's really long, but it's long because it's like I think because it's got a lot of like because it's slow, not because it's overblown with a lot of different complex sections or anything. It's just they're adding a lot of like color in there, and the production is actually kind of tolerable on it, especially for the guitar solo, which is like at least you can hear what Tony is trying to do. It's a lot less muddled, even though the tone isn't still that great. It's a little more classic Tony, and just another kind of unique song. And yeah, great vocals again by Gillan.
All right, I will give it a 4.5. I really like it for all the reasons you said. It just the way that it's it's chugging along. Like it sounds like at any point it should fall apart, and it just doesn't. And to Rye's point, it's a little long. It doesn't feel like it's as long as it is, but it is too long. It's 7.5 minutes or something. How long is it? A little over 7.5 minutes. So yeah, it's pretty long, and that's not taking into account that 45 seconds of the song, which is definitely the same song, despite what they want to say. Even get a few.
I'm sure it would have
bars
been
of
shorter if they had picked up the tempo,
Right, and it's and I
it's pretty impressive that it's that long and it still holds your attention, and they're playing the same riff pretty consistently. They're adding all those layers on top, which is great. Like, it's very interesting composition for sure.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of crazy changes or a lot going on in the song at all, but it is it's awesome. I think it's the one I always kind of, this and Trash are probably the two that I always really think of when I think of this album.
Those are the videos. The videos are ridiculous too. Have you watched those?
I don't think I've ever seen the videos.
Oh, we should do a watch along on the videos. They're hilarious.
That's
they look like they're made by, you remember that Trauma company, the Toxic Avenger? It looks like it's made by those guys.
No, I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's an episode in there for sure. All right. So next up, we're going to flip this record over and get into the first song on the second side, which is, of course, Digital Bitch.
Bass effects.
This is such a pure Sabbath riff.
It's pretty badass. I definitely slept on this song on my first kind of listen through.
Yep.
It's a killer. Isn't that tone that Geezer has? It's like his growls.
I think this song reminds me of the intro riff. Is it Megalomania I'm thinking of?
The windy part there.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it is. It's a sped up version of something like on Sabotage.
Yeah, it's like slipping away.
Or it could be. The Rit?
I think it's Megalomania.
Or something.
Feel it slipping away.
Or Megalomania? I don't know.
The guitarist was heavily
I
influenced
can't hum another song in my head while listening to this.
Bitch.
I'll pause it.
What would you call those? Like hyena calls or something? What is it? He does it all the time.
Yeah.
It's definitely a distinct animal.
Gillan says that this song is about a real person in real life, but he won't say who.
But everybody thinks it's Sharon.
Yeah.
He wrote it after Sharon got her talk show or something?
He went into the future and saw what she would become.
Got it right, baby.
Gillan is out of control in the song.
Oh, it's about to get worse or better.
Whoa.
Probably the best lead tone he's had so far.
Because Gillan's all over, stepping all over it.
Like he had to EQ out some of the treble so he could cut through. Bring up the mid-range.
It does have like kind of that like 90s pedal effect, like the Digitech like whammy or something. You know, like it's just like it's in some kind of weird hyper octave that will make a dog's head explode or something. I had to take my headphone off for a second to see, like, is that just my ear ringing?
Yeah. Could you imagine them like reuniting with Ozzy and then just being like, so anybody want to cover the Born Again era? And he'd be like, what are you, crazy?
Apparently, Gillan says he liked doing the Ozzy stuff because he could do it, but he struggled with the Dio, the Dio stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he does really good justice to the OG stuff for sure. Like, yeah, you can tell he's into it. Like Dio just kind of phones it in a little bit. Like you can tell he's singing above it. My favorite of the new singers that does when they do the old ones though is like, well, Hughes was just a booze bag when he was doing them, but the Ray Gillan stuff. If you ever heard that, like when he does live, he does some of the old stuff. It's pretty badass.
That's awesome.
No, I'd love to hear it. I love Ray Gillan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his voice, not him as a person.
Yeah.
Yes. We have to make sure to qualify that for all of our listeners who know who he is, because oh my goodness,
you don't want to be on the cover of Blabbermouth tomorrow. John Matola says he loves Ray Gillan as a person.
John Three Peppers Matola gets blasted
as a person.
Saying that he loves Ray Gillan as a person, not as a musician. Yeah, who knows? Even as a musician, people might still give me shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but boy, what a stand-up guy he was. He did so much for women's rights. I don't know.
Okay, we might have to cut some of this now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, digital bitch.
This might be on the blooper reel. Yeah. All right, back to Sabbath proper. Yeah.
Digital bitch. Where's this? Digital? I feel weird saying digital bitch so much. It's such a weird song title. I just always, ever since the first time I heard it, I'm just like, what's this song all about? And I listened to it and I still didn't understand. The lyrics kind of remind me a little bit of like Mary Long. He's in that kind of mindset where he's just going after somebody. You know, it's not the only song where he does that, but when Gillan just sets his sight on someone and decides he's going to rip them apart, this is what happens. Yeah. In this case, we supposedly don't know who it is though. All right, what do you guys rate Digital Bitch?
I'll give it a 3. Because I did originally, I know on the first listen, I didn't like it. I didn't like the hook. I thought it was kind of goofy, and I still don't really like the hook, but I do like the verses. And that solo at the end is a bit much. Maybe it's just, it wears on you because there's a lot of bad lead work, like lead tones on here, but yeah, I'll give it a 3. Right down the middle. Like a digital bitch.
All right, John.
Digital bitch will get 4.5 from me.
Oh my goodness.
I actually really liked it a lot more than I remembered. I was going into it thinking like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna, like this as much, but I really did. And I like, contrary to like, I was like, okay, so we're gonna get back to the same lead tone that he had in Trashed, which was a mess, I think. And it actually wasn't. It was actually like on the cusp of it, but it's like I kind of liked it better. Like it was I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, but it's like there was more clarity in this one, even though it was like, very similar.
It's growing on you.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, over the years, it probably did. And this is one of the songs too that I always liked because it was just like, the first song on side 2, just like the straight ahead rocker. Gillan just like screeching all the way through, especially at the end where he was like, screaming over Tony's guitar solo. I always thought that was badass. I loved it. Like Gillan is just doing more like wailing on this album than anything, and I always loved it. So
I don't think he ever let Ozzy sing over his solos.
Yeah, right.
Like that's pretty bold, right?
No, usually Ozzy's just like, come on, clap your fucking hands.
Now he is, back in the day.
But but yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's
no, but I really enjoyed it.
Like I said earlier, if you had if they had hired somebody, an up and comer to be the new singer for Black Sabbath, there's no way they would have even attempted to. Oh, Iommi's soloing. Excuse me, I'm just gonna belt out some vocals while he's doing it. Gillan doesn't care. He even did that to Blackmore. So yeah, as far as a ranking, I will give it a 3.5. I like the song, but I agree. I think the hook, the da da dan da 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 dan, is a little, I don't know, corny. I don't know if that's the right word, but it doesn't hit as hard.
Well,
I think
when you sing it, it sounds that way.
Yes, when I sing it like that, it definitely does.
We've already established.
Yeah, we've established I am not.
Oh no.
But yeah, I like it. I just the hook doesn't grab me quite as much. All right, that brings us to the next track, which is the title track, Born Again. Sounds like some bass effects going on there.
Sounds like the beginning of a really heavily processed like Red Hot Chili Peppers song or something before the drums kicked in.
Are you dreaming of Californication?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, this is like, how people say, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. It sounds like Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. This one is very much that. This is like the perfect hybrid, I think. If they were...
Like this is their child in time.
Yeah, exactly. Gillan is just amazing on this song. Oh my god. I've already got goosebumps just thinking about what he's going to deliver, right? The lyrics are ridiculous on this one too, if you want to pull those up.
And like the melody that he's singing is just like all over the place. He's not like anybody else would have just like, been really mellow, more measured. And he's just doing his own. He's like scatting and bebopping and
totally.
I could
and
see
bringing
this
it down and bringing it up. Yeah,
I could see this being like one of the songs that Bill Ward sings with like an effect on his voice.
I don't know. They never did this one live, I don't think. The recordings that I've seen, they did like Trash, they did Hotline, they did Hero the Hero. This is kind of it's a bit of a studio song as far as like it seems.
I found a live version on YouTube.
Oh really?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, It's YouTube, so it says Born Again live in 1986 with Ian Gillan, so that's questionable, but
Yeah.
there's a few of them there, so maybe they did.
That's so weird.
It's very weird.
The gray plastic retards.
Very
That's not
weird
PC
lyric.
at all. I always found it interesting, like how this chorus, he's doing the same thing every time, but it's like it evolves underneath those big chords that Naomi's doing there. And then this little killer.
His like, voice cracks, but it's just
Almost
like
lost it. That was
it's like a
another-
good crack, so you leave it in.
Exactly. That's the magic.
No, when Gillan does it, it just can't do no wrong.
And when I do it, it's all like Born Again. Why is that?
Because you're not Ian Gillan.
Oh, right, I keep forgetting. Our listeners are gonna be very disappointed.
There's the congas. Oh no, that's just Tom Market. I still haven't heard that flute.
Yeah, wait for that
Oh.
flute.
I haven't really been listening for it, but we should.
Now this is classic Tony. This makes me think of like something off Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, this is jazzy. Planet Caravan style. It's like, he's got that in his arsenal for sure.
I'm just really expecting Tony Iommi to bust out a flute solo. Like, he's like, oh, I never realized there was like a 2-minute extended flute solo in this song. It just never jumped out at me. Just gets all Ian Anderson, yeah, just starts going nuts.
Standing on one leg, flamingo style.
It's one of those things you have to turn up the fade out like really loud, and then you hear him just doo-doo-doo-doo
Yeah,
at the end, just a little trill.
I don't know why it keeps coming back to Red Hot Chili Peppers, but there is like a song where Flea plays the trumpet in the background. It's like super quiet, and I probably heard the album 100 times before I even caught it.
Yeah.
All right, Born
Stuff.
Again.
That's
Good
a big
stuff.
one.
Big song, big song.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what do we give Born Again, my friends?
I'm going, do I give it a 5? That lift is just so huge. I mean, yeah, I'm going to have to give that one a 5 too.
He's doing it.
Those are the
Right.
ones that stand, Disturbing the Priest and Born Again, like that covers the real power moments for me. That just, yeah, the dynamics, the lift, and then he goes, like, he climbs into the Born Agains, and then he comes back out with a little scat while they're still kind of in that zone.
Mm-hmm.
He really, yeah, just making it interesting.
All right.
How reserved are you guys with 5s? Maybe I'm dropping 2 5s on an album. Is that like you're just like,
No.
who is this fucking
No,
clown?
it's
No, we've done it.
Okay.
We've
John's
done it.
probably a little more reserved than I am, but
I'm stingy with my 5s.
I'm going back. I haven't given a 5 since in quite a while. It's been 10 episodes. Well, we haven't done an album every episode, but I haven't given a 5 since Trouble. John gave a 5 in our last episode.
That is true. Yeah, the last 5 you gave was Whitesnake. Well, anyways, I'll give this one a 4. I'm really happy that like Iommi's guitar solo, which I forgot, like fades out the end of the song, which is really cool. But it seems to have more purpose. It reminded me, like I was saying, as like one of his solos off Heaven and Hell. It sounded well composed. It cut through the the tone of the album. And the song is just it's really cool. It's mellow. Gillan's vocals are, whether he probably didn't plan any of it. I mean, he probably just improvised the whole thing, so it'd be impossible for anybody else to come in and try and duplicate this, maybe even him. So, yeah, it's just great. One thing that I noticed though, we're listening to this is just like kind of the lack of yeah, you got Tony and like these effects and everything, but like the rhythm guitar is just really lost on me here because there's so many other like effects throughout the album. So it's a heavy album, but it's not like your typical like guitar heavy. I mean, you have your riffs and stuff at the beginning, but it's like I don't really feel it that much. Kind of missing that crunchy Iommi guitar in here.
I will give it a 4 as well. It's funny to me, the music reminds me of Ian Gillan band, but not not the vocals. The only part of the Ian Gillan band that's present. Just kind of it reminds me of one of their more mellow tracks, but instead of a guitar solo, it'd be like a sax solo or something playing on it. Maybe 5 Moons, maybe that song. It's got that kind of feeling to it, but the vocals don't sound like Ian Gillan band. Again, I know that sounds strange, but that's just kind of what I'm getting out of it. I love the mood that it sets. It's another one that's, on the long side. It's almost 7 minutes long, but it sets a great mood at this point in the album, and really, yeah, I'm digging it. I think the guitar, it sounds like the guitar tone keeps getting better, the lead tone, but it still just doesn't cut through the mix like the way it should. It's not sitting on top. Like, it's a little bit muddy and a little bit too much in the background, but the overall tone of it sounds much, much better than Trashed. For me, anyway.
No, yeah, definitely.
All right. Next up, we've got the second to last song on the album, Hotline.
There's your crunch.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Listen to that thumping bass.
Yeah.
See, now I was just finished saying I was missing the crunchy guitar, and it's like, here it is. Yeah. Like first song where it's prominent in the rhythm guitar.
Squawk. I swear it's got to be some animal. It's like some mating call. Crazy Wolverine or something.
Probably scratching at the door of the manor when he's doing the vocals. Anybody in there? I feel like if this was like produced a little different and maybe the tempo was up a little bit, it being like a Gillan song.
Yep.
That, I guess, pre-chorus there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. It's sitting. His vocals really are sitting in between. Was that the chorus? I don't know the names things. Name parts.
Again, a good tone, but it was a little too far back in the mix.
Yep.
A little tambourine.
Ooh. Now we're getting into some fucking Kiss.
Flute solo right here. No.
Wow. He snuck a little one in there. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard a little cowbell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're busting out all the classic rock chops in this.
There we go.
There you go. Naomi was hanging out with Van Halen for a little bit there. Forgot about that solo, man. That's a killer.
Yeah, right?
Killer dynamics in there. Gillan wants to match it.
This riff reminds me of I Can't Drive 55.
Nice. Does Hagar get into that kind of a range though?
Not
Does
quite.
Gillan have a range that he hits that's like insane, like a Mariah Carey thing or something? Like he can hit some note that's
Hit
ridiculous.
some pretty
Is
high
it-
notes.
Yeah.
I think that note is probably like the last note in like Child in Time.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can go higher than that. Although I feel like, you know, on this album, I'm like surprised he didn't like friggin' blow his eyeballs out. You know, and then they just like.
Yeah.
He's not holding back.
No, not at all. That's one of the best things about it is just like, you know what it makes me think of? I always find a way to relate this stuff to Kiss too. Is just like when Vinnie Vincent is just like left to his own devices, you know, and then it's just like, I'm gonna just shred for like 20 minutes or like Ingve or something like that. You know, that's like what Gillan is on this album. He's like, I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
the whole thing. I don't give a shit. You know,
And you got to think the other guys are probably just loving it, right? Like, because they're obviously. I haven't heard any drama about the mixes on this one. They're not trying. Well, I mean, lots of drama about the mixes, but you know, like I haven't heard things about them being like, we had to like wrangle in and
like the
Ian Gillan
performances.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the performances. They have a high respect for each other, and you see that when they play live too, right? Like, yeah.
So,
Wow.
So there's a couple of videos on YouTube. One is about Gillan's vocal range, putting it from D2 to B5, which puts his range at about 3 3/4 octaves, which is pretty impressive. Some people claim it goes from E2 to G above soprano high C or C6, which is a little higher.
Most
but,
Mariah.
yeah, Mariah, I'm sure. Mariah is like, I don't know, if Gillan is C6, Carrie's got to be like C9 or something.
She's like dog whistle, you know.
Yeah, we've never actually heard her highest notes because we are unable to. But I also found another interesting video, which I won't play, but maybe I'll link in the show notes, which was the mystery of the flute on Black Sabbath's Born Again. So we're not the only ones who are wondering where's that flute. Apparently, from just some very brief Googling, it looks like it's on the song Born Again, which we just listened to. But we must have missed it, even though we were talking about it during that song and looking for it. But
must have been well buried.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
said,
the
it
mix.
could have been well buried. Maybe it was just those high notes were lost due to the melting vinyl master or whatever it was.
Hmm. And Tony's like, hey, I play flute on this. It's going to say flute next to my goddamn name.
I don't care if they can't hear it. Write flute. You know, FLUTE. Put it in.
Right there.
Yeah.
Put it in.
I don't want them thinking Jeff Nichols did that shit on the keyboard.
So what do you guys give Hotline?
I'm going to give it a 4. It's a rocker. And yeah, that solo blew me away there. Like, just because he has like kind of the little mini solo too. And then like, there's so many different tricks in there. Lots of hammer on craziness there. And he was doing this part where he was kind of stepping down, and oh yeah, that was a beauty Iommi moment there for sure. So yeah, but I'll give it a 4 because the next one is kind of similar, but just a little bit more.
All right.
I'm ahead of myself, aren't I? I'm supposed to be living in the moment, man.
Live in the moment, man.
You're one step ahead, always.
All right, John.
4.5 Hotline.
All right.
This was this is again, like I haven't heard this album in like a while, so it's like I have these preconceived notions of what I thought about it like a while ago. And yeah, this one I just liked a lot better. Like, you know, this is the first one where like the bass and the guitar just like locked in, and like the guitar's got this great crunchy riff and rhythm throughout, which I was missing up until previously. And the guitar solos were like getting so much better. Like at the beginning they were just like so muddled, and now I feel like they're toward the end of the album, it's like it seems like it's getting better. Like I even heard some hints of like, you know, things like, oh, that makes me think of like Heaven and Hell, and there's like some stuff in there that makes me think of, I think in his second solo, made me think of some stuff he did in Technical Ecstasy somewhere, just like little, you know, hints at things like you can just kind of makes you feel that. I couldn't tell you where, but that's all good stuff. And I mean, you know, of course, like, you know, Gillan is like killing it. And yeah, the production doesn't seem to be bugging me as much anymore. You know, I think I went into it like without hearing this album for so long, and then just like, production sucks. It's like, yeah, there are some problems, but not as problematic as I thought it would be listening to the album.
Yeah, I've always found that even with these last 2 tracks that it does get, because even like you noticed it right off the bat when this one kicked in, that crunchy tone, there's just like there's definition in the riff there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if these songs were written a bit later in the process or something like that, because I did notice that Hotline is one of the few ones that's only credited to Iommi, Butler, and Gillan. The rest of them are Ward's in there as well. So I don't know what happened with those. If they
that's
were,
right. Yep.
I don't know if this one might have been brought into them by Gillan and worked that way or something like that. But yeah, for whatever reason, that's one of the only ones that doesn't have Ward credited.
I wonder if we're just like our ears are adjusting to the mix, like when you
Could be.
When you listen to somebody speaking like
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, or someone speaking with a really heavy accent and you can't understand them at first, but then you listen for like a minute and your ear just kind of adjusts to their accent and then you can understand them. Like, I wonder if it's the same thing with this mix. Like, if we went back and listened to Trashed after listening to the whole album, would we be like, oh yeah, the guitar sounds fine now? But probably not, but just throwing that out there. I will give this one a 4 as well. I think it's another really great, solid rocker, done really well. Not much more to say about it than that. Not a ton of lyrics, just a few lines of lyrics on this one. It's more just kind of about rocking out and Gillan screaming. So
doesn't he say suck my wine at one point? I always thought like he's about to say dick. It's like he just switches it to wine.
He says, show me to a sucker and you'll see my name.
That's what I hear. You suck my wine.
Show
Come
me
down
to
to
a
the
sucker
river,
and
babies.
you'll see my name. Maybe that's the line.
Okay. Sucker, yeah. I just heard suck, and I'm like,
I'm just searching
"She's telling
suck,
us
and
to
then
suck it?"
I'm searching suck, and then it keeps bringing me down to the comment section. Production sucks. Production sucks. Production sucks.
Oh man.
Poor Born Again.
Yeah.
All right, which brings us to the last track on this album, which is the ever so sweet "Keep It Warm." Mr. Sensitive over here.
He hangs on that so beautifully.
Another classic Sabbath groove here.
Great bass in there. Almost like fretless sounding.
So as I understand it, the song is about Gillan being on the road and his woman being at home, and she's made a dinner for him, and she's got leftovers, and she got them in the stove by her side, and Gillan wants to make sure she keeps those leftovers warm, so when he gets home he can have a nice warm meal. That's how I'm reading it.
That's what she's keeping warm. Okay.
Yeah. That's how I'm reading it.
I always wondered, what does he say there? Keep it warm. It's always written as "keep it warm, rat." R-A-T. Like, and I was looking it up. I was like, what's a rat? Like, what does that mean? And it actually is a slang term for groupies in wrestling, like professional wrestling. They're called ring rats. Yeah, so they call like groupies rats. So but I guess Gillan's, unless he's like tight with WWF or whatever, but rat. I think he just does it because it's a cool thing to say.
Rat. It's a cool thing to say, rat.
Yeah.
The classic Sabbath.
Freebird.
Picking it up. Oh yeah, Freebird too.
Yeah.
Total Freebird. Here's one for the simple man.
This is
really good.
Great classic Iommi solo. Done a bit of disservice by the production, but still sounds okay.
Really, this is really making me think of like it's a Technical Ecstasy or Never Say Die outtake. Like, I feel like it could have been on one of those albums, the music.
According to the lyrics, it says keep it warm at the place by your side. But
Oh, he's enunciating differently. Yeah.
But it does sound like he's
No,
saying,
there's an R in there.
It sounds like
Yeah.
keep it warm, rats.
It's a
I
very
mean,
weird
knowing Gillan, it could be, you know.
He says it every time, so he's driving it home. Maybe it's a pet name for his woman that's keeping it warm at home. Rat. It's not a very nice pet
I'm
name.
gonna try that when we're doing the show.
Hey,
I'm gonna go upstairs and as I say goodnight to my wife and be like, "Good night, rat."
I'll be like, Nate, how'd you sleep on the couch? Oh, my neck.
She's usually half asleep by the time I'm done the show. She's like, "Oh, what album did you talk about this week?" I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll talk about it in the morning, rat."
Yeah, that'll wake her up, I'm sure.
Like, what?
What the hell did you call me, you son of a bitch? What the hell did you call me, you digital bitch?
You gray plastic retard. There's a lot of good insults in this one.
Yeah, it's filled with them.
You won't be getting any love-a-ducking that night.
Love a ducking.
Wow, I really liked that.
Yeah, that's a stomper, eh?
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of like the end of like an Aussie tune off of was it SAT, not SATO, but like one of the songs on one of his early albums. Just kind of reminds me of that fade out and the way that the music is going.
Mm.
It's funny drawing all these parallels between things that are sort of related but shouldn't be giving any influence to this at all.
Yeah.
But they make us think of it, you know. That's, I mean, really what's making me think about is like other Sabbath stuff, which is, you know, it's kind of self-contained.
Yeah, and that's like what I talked about earlier is when the first time I heard this, it's just like, man, I'm getting this total Sabbath vibe to this, and it makes sense. It's got all the instruments are being played by the original Sabbath guys, but it sounds like, yeah, like this stuff that summons up Never Say Die, Technical Ecstasy, Sabotage. Not so much the earlier Sabbath stuff, but
Yeah, Sabotage on kind of vibes. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, the cocaine era
there's
Sabbath
a bit of
stuff.
yeah, yeah. There's a little bit less experimentation, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not as like it's got the dynamics, the weird shifts, the lifts. Kind of like Technical Ecstasy is all about the lifts, right? Like the symphonic. So you can tell it's still got that kind of vibe. And it's not as like I find like Sabotage. I love Sabotage, but it's very like when they go to a different section, it's very like wah,
Yeah.
you know? Whereas this is kind of more in that vibe of Tech X and stuff, where it kind of like flows into the parts. It's the overall changes are slight, but the amount of different layers that they're putting on is really what makes it interesting. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it would be really cool to hear if it was like really mixed properly and like you could hear the parts and you could really, you know, because there's just that ice pick. I've blocked it out, and I'm a really big fan of this album as a whole, just despite the production.
Yeah, and I think when you're listening to it, like basically every other time I've ever listened to this, I've been listening to it while driving or doing whatever, and I'm not really sitting there focused on. I've always picked up on some of the production details, more so today listening to it more critically. But like I said, when it's good music, good songwriting, and I don't really. It doesn't draw your attention away. It's so bad, but it's obviously got some definite flaws. All right, how are we ranking Keep It Warm?
I'm gonna go 4.5. Not quite Disturbing the Priest. But Born Again, did I give it 5? Yeah, not quite that level. But for the rockers, it's got like a stomp to it. It's a great closer, I think. Shorter than usually. I like the long closers, like, you know, like the falling off the edge of the world kind of over and over. Those big
epic
closers are great. In the Dio era, I just thought that they really hammered it with that. But this is a nice kind of short one, very suited to Gillan. The lyrics are cool.
The lyrics are
rat.
I like the last two lines of the song, which completely contradict each other. Since I met you, I can't leave you alone. I'm leaving now, but I'll be coming home.
He changes his mind. Well,
that didn't last long. I just can't leave you.
Bye,
I'm leaving.
Well, peace. Peace out.
Keep it warm, rat.
Yeah.
All right. John, what do you think?
I'm giving this one a 4. I really, I don't know. I think that it's kind of weird. Like the second half of it feels like this album is like, some albums are really front loaded, but I think this is like back loaded, if that's a thing. Like I'm really enjoying like the second or the later half of this album a lot more. Like, and this last song was like really melodic and heavy, and I just like the groove that it got into, and yeah, that's all there is to say about it. I really enjoyed it. It's a great closer. It seems to be really suitable for this album. You can't explain it.
I will follow suit with a 4. Just kind of this song and this album in general just reminds me of something I don't really need to be reminded of, which is just how much I love Black Sabbath. And it's got it's always been such an interesting album to me. Much more so, and I guess we'll know when we take a look at it, but much more so than Glenn Hughes era Sabbath. It sounds to me so well, and obviously a lot of instrumental changes in that. Iommi's the only constant between those two.
Right.
But it really it
And
just
Jeff.
sticks home. Oh yeah, and Jeff.
Don't forget
Sorry,
Jeff.
Jeff. That's so unfair.
He always gets forgotten.
Poor Jeff. Oh, by the way, get off stage, please.
Yeah.
We don't want to see you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just reminds me that original trio of musicians and whatever singer you throw at them, just what they can produce and that groove that they create together. And each of the three of them is such a huge part of it. And you just throw in Ian Gillan and you get this weird mix of like kind of Mark II era Purple and Sabbath. It's just nothing like it's really ever quite happened again, other than a few little collaborations here and there. But
Yeah, I've never thought of it the way that you guys are kind of leaning towards, where you're saying like Sabotage to Never Say Die mixed in with some Mark II. Like, like that's pretty cool. Because there isn't very much Dio flavor, even riff wise, tone wise, on any of these tracks. Like, is there one that you could see Dio doing? I'm just thinking, because there must have been workshopping some of this stuff.
yeah, you would think, right?
I don't know. I mean, what? I mean, I honestly, I can't. I mean, I have to like sit back and listen to it maybe again. But I mean, I heard more pre-Dio Sabbath in the music here than I did like Dio era Sabbath. But I mean, if you got in like a different producer, they arranged them a little bit differently or whatever, then maybe. But it's like I immediately can't think of anything. But
if you had Ronnie in there switching the mixes up in the middle of the night, like the claims.
Well, it's interesting,
but it's weird, right?
It's always interesting to me to think like, what would Gillan have done on Slaves and Masters, or what would Dio have done on Down to Earth or things like that. I can picture Dio doing like Trashed. Obviously, it would be very different. I
It would be about rainbows and dragons.
Exactly. I could his voice would work well on just about any of these. I think the only one I probably have trouble with like Disturbing the Priest. Can't imagine what Dio would have done, but
well, maybe 90s Dio, like Angry Machines.
All right, yeah, that's fair. I could see
one of my
that.
favorite Strange Highways. Like I could totally see that vibe. Like,
oh hell yeah!
I mean, he would have
G
had to do something with these, so he would have done something, but.
Oh yeah, but I think a lot of it has to do with the arrangement too, and like the delivery of the vocals, and I mean, you get somebody different in there, and you'd hear like, two completely different things. It's just amazing how, like, when Ronnie came in to Sabbath, like Heaven and Hell sounded like a completely different band, and Mob Rules, and then you get to this one, and it sounds again like a completely different band, but it still sounds like Sabbath somehow. It's
I think it sounds more like Sabbath. I think to me this sounds more like Sabbath than, I should say, more like Ozzy era Sabbath than Heaven and Hell did. Or
it's weird how this kind of like, now that we've heard in its entirety, I think that this is kind of like now like the next logical step after Dio, because it's kind of like they went back to kind of like their they're kind of like evil,
Mhm.
kind of like a kind of sloppy sounding, like the loose production, whatever, like their roots, almost, but in a weird kind of way, because it's like the production was just like still problematic. The drums just had way too much like reverb on it, it was just way too big.
Yeah.
It sounds like somebody just like took the faders and pushed like, the mids and the highs like all the way up, and you're just kind of like,
Yeah, the
you know
snare sounded like a garbage can.
But the compositions and the lyrics that are put into it, the performances, you can tell they're all doing
right,
is it's like top level. So they weren't calling it in, and just
right.
something happened. I mean, we'll never truly know, I guess.
I don't know
You
if
can
they did
piece
this so much
together.
in 1983, but nowadays every album that comes out is the band's like, oh, we're really returning to our roots on this
Right.
one, and they give you the whole
Mhm.
line of marketing garbage. But I could, if they had said that with this album, like on this album we're really returning to our roots and picking up where we left off, blah blah blah. It's true, like it's really true that they did that on this album. I don't know if they presented it that way. I don't know if that was commonplace back then, but it definitely comes across that way in the final product.
It'd be interesting to think about too, is like, because of course, you can't talk about this album without talking about the production. I mean, we all agree the performances were great, songwriting is great, but you wonder how it would be if, like, they say like, Martin Birch was in producing this album, like if he had like, control of like the dynamics, like the songwriting, the sonics, even like on the next couple of albums, like Jeff Glicksman, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
like a better known producer like that, somebody with like a track record, like just for sake of argument, let's just say Martin Birch, because I mean he's like the the gold standard for like Purple, White Snake, Sabbath, great albums,
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people would disagree. So it's just like you wonder what would this album have sounded like if he was producing on this, if he was the engineer,
Yeah. Yeah, they
So
had the Robin. So Robin Black is like, was he credited as producer, or is he just
he was
engineer and
credited as
self?
engineer, and I think that is
Okay.
what the problem was, because obviously
Yeah.
Robin Black seems to know what he's doing.
Well,
Um,
he was producer on like Sabotage and I think Tech X as well. Maybe Never
oh
Say
yeah,
Die. So he's like been around them a lot of time.
yeah. But I think
Um,
they had the ultimate producer credit in the end say, and
right.
like you talked about, this was everyone kind of after they recorded weren't really that involved, and nobody was really making the final calls, and it just kind of limped its way to the production line, and that's what you get as a result. If
Mhm.
somebody had been calling the shots, like a more high powered producer, or if they had just given Robin Black, said you're in charge of X, Y, or Z, maybe it would have turned out a little different,
Yeah.
but it did not.
No.
Yeah, one of the great mysteries would be like, or things that people would like to hear is this album repackaged and remixed,
Yeah,
which
but
I
unfortunately
think would be very
the
interesting.
masters are allegedly nowhere to be found, so
Yeah.
They're in the ocean with the concerto, probably.
it's down at the bottom of the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, Don Arden was quite the mobster, so they're probably buried somewhere in
with a
Jersey.
body.
Yeah.
Where's the Born Again Masters? Don't
It's
worry
in the
about
river.
it.
It's down in the river.
Don't worry about it.
Sleeping with the
Sleeps with the
fishes.
fishes. Oh.
There you go.
Uh,
Jinx.
So when this album came out, apparently there were like up to 5 additional tracks rumored that were written for this album, maybe, and one other that was recorded, but I don't think the other ones were put out. It was released in 1983 in August, had a lot of commercial success. Obviously, not a lot of critical success, but a lot of commercial success. Um, it became the highest charting Sabbath album since Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Became an American top 40 hit, and it was the first Black Sabbath album to not have an RIAA certification in the U.S. Bill Ward left the band immediately after, did not go on the tour, as we know. Mr. Bell Biv de Bevins took over. I just coined that. Um, Have I talked about that in the show that I worked with the guy that lived next door to Biv? Of Del Biv.
No.
I think I have. I'm like,
Oh,
this guy Rob I
maybe,
used
I
to
don't
work with, the
know.
coolest guy. His neighbor was Biv from Bro.
Biv. Hey,
I think
Biv.
I always say it's Biv. I don't know if it was DeVoe or Bell, but it was one of the three guys in Bell Biv. It was just really cool. So Geezer left the band after the tour. The album hit 4 in the UK charts and top 40 in the US. Ozzy Osbourne says Born Again is the best thing that I've heard from Sabbath since the original group broke up.
He also said that he never listen to it.
Yeah, he says a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'll never listen to it. It's the best thing they've done since the original Sabbath.
Who remembers the Fillmore East?
Who remembers what I said last week?
All right, Ozzy, calm down.
In 1992, Ian Gillan told director Martin Baker, "I was the worst singer Black Sabbath ever had. It was totally incompatible with any of the music they'd ever done. I didn't wear leathers. I wasn't of that image. I think the fans probably were in a total state of confusion." In 1992, Iommi admitted to Guitar World, "Ian is a great singer, but he's from a completely different background, and it was difficult for him to come in and sing Sabbath material." But yet, in the same time, they're all always saying, "Oh, it was great to have a British singer. We're all from the same background, and it works really well." So hard to know.
Depends what camp is spinning it, right?
Exactly. So when the band heard the final product, they were horrified by the muffled mix. In his autobiography, Iommi explains that Gillan inadvertently blew a couple of tweeters in the audio speakers by playing the backing tracks too loud and nobody noticed. "We just thought it was a bit of a funny sound, but it went very wrong somewhere between the mix and the mastering and the pressing of the album. The sound was really dull and muffly. I didn't know about it because we were already on tour in Europe by the time we heard the album was out of the charts, but the sound was awful." Gillan says of his time with Sabbath, "By God, we had a good year, and the songs, I think, were quite good." And then, obviously, they go on a tour. There's tours and videos and all sorts of other stuff we can talk about at a later date.
Yeah, definitely would have to do a two-parter for that.
Yeah, exactly. This album should have probably been a two-parter, but it is what it is. We go long form here on the Deep Purple podcast, even when we're talking about Black Sabbath.
Yeah, you guys go deep.
Well, speaking of such things earlier, we're talking about certain other albums. I compiled our ratings here.
Oh, yes.
So me and Nate.
I probably skewed this whole thing, right? With my 5. So it's the highest rated. It's better than In Rock.
Well, the me and Nate combined rating was a 7.2, which makes it fall squarely between Who Do We Think We Are and Down to Earth.
Oh, that's good company.
Which was Nate had mentioned before. Who Do We Think We Are getting a slightly 0.01 more of a rating.
And that's very skewed by me.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty underrated offering from them.
Yeah. So let me see. So Rye gave it a 3.89. Liking it as much as Nate, who gave it a 3.89, and I came in slightly under 3.83. So you guys liked it the same, and I liked it slightly less.
You have that backwards. You liked it the same. I ranked it a little lower.
Excuse me. I do that all the time. So Nate liked it slightly less, which is kind of interesting. Folks, yes.
But a 0.06 difference from bottom to top out of the three of us. So we're pretty much all on board of this, around the same ranking on this album.
And so looking at our guest ratings here, first of all, the combined rating is for all three of us is 11.61, which is actually one of the higher ones from our guests. So combined ratings, so Paul, Jesus Christ Superstar, Nick with Captain Beyond, and then Rye, Born Again.
There you go.
Oh, we have the Simple Man with Spectrum.
Generous.
Yep. And then, the Simple Man, Chris L, Pot of Thunder, and then Scott with Coverdale Page.
Yep. You've had some stud guests.
Sure have. We got the best today.
No,
Hell yeah. So
It's
yeah,
fun.
there's where our guest ratings fall. So yeah, it's all in all, I think that's just numbers. It doesn't mean anything. But it's fun to look at and talk about. This was a fun album, and
Yeah, it was a ton of fun.
to do. Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this episode for a really long time. We've been chatting with Rye for a really long time about it, and thankfully, in the middle of getting your family moved across the ocean and moved again after that, we were finally able to make this happen. So, super, super happy that you were able to come on. And
yeah, I'd love to come back sometime. We'll have to do 7-star.
Yeah,
we can bring Hughes on though, right? You guys are buddy with him now.
Yeah, we'll have him as the second guest.
Yeah.
This one, 5. Easily a 5.
It would all just be rated in like peace signs and
a little dove.
Doves. Yeah.
It's a dove. But
oh man.
It's great to we pretty much we talk about this a lot, but we used to in our early days we would listen to the album like 5 times, and now we're pretty much just at the opposite where we're like, don't listen to the album for the next 3 years until we get to it on the show. It's fun to rediscover it, especially if it's something you've heard a bunch but maybe haven't heard in a while. So it's
it really is. Yeah,
good to hear it. It feels like you're hearing it for the first time almost. So
well, that makes it fun, not doing like quote research before the episode, coming in with that kind of newish point of view or whatever.
Yeah, I heard new things in there too. Like I've listened to some a lot, but some of those parts, like, we were always, all of us were mentioning the production all the time, but we also, you notice some of that lead that he's doing, even though it sounds like daggers, there's some cool shit in there.
Oh yeah.
He was really pulling out a lot of tricks. It's an innovative album for sure. Unique.
And despite all the new stuff we heard, we still have not heard the flute. So
this is true.
If you're listening, give us a timestamp on when we can hear that flute. What song? Please, we're dying here. We want to know where the flute is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rye, thank you so much for coming on this week. It was awesome hanging out with you and listening to this album. And we look forward to having Born Again Part 2 or whatever else you'll be on.
The videos, the concerts,
hell yeah,
the dirt.
Let's do it all.
We'll do a whole spin-off concert, spin-off podcast just on Born Again.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Rye.
Keep it warm, rats.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.